Good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome you. I am President Irene Bustamante Adams and call this regular board meeting of June 26, 2025 to order. The time is 5 p.m. I would like to remind everyone to silence your electronic devices. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the territorial homeland of the Niuwu, the Moapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. We'll start with our opening item, item 1.01, flag salute. Trustee Henry, would you please lead us? Before we move on, I'd like to make sure that if Trustee Biasotti is on the line, not yet. Okay, we'll continue to move on though. For item 1.02, adoption of the agenda, is there anyone that did not get a chance to fill out a public speaker card? It's a yellow comment card. Nope. So no, thank you. There's no public speaker card for the adoption of the agenda. Therefore, I will turn to Trustee Zamora to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the flexibility and the following changes. Pull item 2.06, Memorandum of Agreement between the Clark County School District and Aselto Learning Clark County for separate discussion and vote. Deletion of item 2.15, Contract Awards. Reference materials provided for item 4.05, Discussion and possible action on entering into a contract with Parker Nelson and Associates Law Firm. And additional reference materials provided for item 4.06, 2025 Legislative Session Overview.
I have a motion. Trustee Cavazos?
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Please cast your votes. Do I have Trustee Biasotti on the line? Not yet. That motion passes 5-0. Next, I'd like to go to item 2.06, the Aselto contract. And I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Henry for a statement.
We have to approve the consent agenda first.
Oh. Sorry, Trustee Henry, I jumped the gun. I'm going to go ahead and go to item 2.02, the consent agenda information. I will entertain a motion to approve the, no, we just did that. One moment, please. Okay, thank you. Sorry for my hesitation there. I'll move to item 2.02, the adoption of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Trustee Dominguez.
Madam President, I have a statement, if possible.
Yes, please proceed.
I want to continue to make this statement. I feel like I'm blocked from being able to ask questions during our trustee briefings, questions that matter to our families and our schools that I represent. The current process requires that any item I want to raise must be pre-approved by the board president or vice president, which creates a barrier to open dialogue and accountability for the consent agenda. I believe it should be open and we should be able to ask any questions we have regarding the consent agenda. This isn't about staff or their ability to answer the questions. They are always willing to help us. It's about the system that is currently in place that limits my ability to do the job. I was elected to do. My constituents deserve a representative who can ask tough questions, seek transparency, and advocate on their behalf. And I, again, advocate that we change this process. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement. Trustee Cavazos?
I actually was going to make a motion to second the motion. Second the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, and so that would be a first. And so Trustee Esparza-Straffigan?
And I will second that.
Thank you. I have a first and a second. Do I have Trustee Biasotti on the line? Okay, then please cast your vote. That passes 4 yeses, 1 no. And we'll move on to item 2.06. And we pulled that for separate discussion, and that is the Aselto contract. And Trustee Henry, would you like to make a statement?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to let you all know that I currently serve as the chairperson of the Board of Directors for Aselto Learning Clark County, and so I will be abstaining from voting on this item.
Is there any public comment, yellow card that has been completed for this item? Seeing none. Any questions about the contract? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve item 2.06. Trustee Satori?
I'll move to accept.
Thank you. I have a first, Trustee Esparza-Straffigan.
I will second that motion.
I have a first and a second for item 2.06. Please cast your votes. We have 4 yeses, 1 abstention. That motion passes. Next, Trustee Henry, would you please read the warrants?
Yes, Madam President. The ratified warrants is listed in the bills payable, transmittal, and board memorandum number 21-24-25 in the total amount of $179,905,774.04.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move to item 3.01. Is there anyone that has not filled out a public speaker card? It's a yellow card to provide public comment. Okay, seeing, is that one? 3.01. Okay, we do have one for 3.01. So thank you, and we'll turn it over, Superintendent, to the team. Okay, Mr. McPartland, please proceed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, I'm Kevin McPartland, Associate Superintendent for the record. I'm joined here this evening by Dr. Sam Scavella, Assistant Superintendent, and Brandy March, Director of the Multi-Tiered System of Supports Department, to bring you the regular Focus 2024 Strategic Plan report on student discipline, which will cover our efforts and results through the third quarter of this school year, which ended on March 14th. As a reminder, these student discipline presentations contribute to the vision of the Board of School Trustees under the student success priority and within the area of safety and engagement. As part of the Focus 2024 Strategic Plan, we have presented the student discipline updates multiple times, starting in 2019, with the last event occurring in March 2025 as part of the consent agenda. As you will see in this presentation, we are observing positive trends related to overall student discipline. And as a result, if we are maintaining our theory of action, which is that if we successfully implement a multi-tiered system of supports to address academic achievement, social emotional growth, and behavior development, and if we provide schools with effective monitoring tools, then student discipline will decrease. Our strategies to address student discipline are aligned to this theory of action and include our comprehensive dashboard, which is used by schools and central offices to guide our efforts to support students and families. We also continue to increase and refine our partnerships, both internally and externally in the community, including with the Nevada Department of Education, to wrap our students and families with the supports they need, as well as to provide schools with an expanded toolkit of options to address and improve student behaviors. Finally, we continue to refine our use of both punitive actions and restorative practices to ensure students are held accountable, but are also encouraged to learn from past behaviors and reconnect with their school community as appropriate. On slide 7, we'll start the data slides. Here we see the comparative data for total suspensions during the first 3 quarters of the last 5 school years. You can see we continue our downward trend of student suspensions over the past 3 years since returning from COVID. Schools have issued approximately 2,200 fewer suspensions this year compared to through the third quarter last year. This represents a 10% decrease in total suspensions. As a reminder, we continue to include the expired targets from the Focus 2024 Strategic Plan as references for you. However, at this time, we truly use this data to compare where we were last year at this point in the school year for each level. As we did for our chronic absenteeism presentation, we added the extra column so you can easily see how the data compares from last year to this year. At the elementary level, suspensions are down 13% compared to last year. At the middle school level, which you know is an area of focus for us, suspensions have decreased by 11% compared to last year. And at the high school level, which demonstrated great improvements last year, we continue to see an 8% decrease in suspensions. Slide 9 demonstrates disproportionality in student suspensions by student group. As a reminder, this data is expressed as a ratio of suspensions per student or by student group per 1,000 students. So just to provide further context to this, using suspensions per 1,000 students allows us to level the playing field, as some student groups are much larger or smaller than others, and it prevents us from being misled by raw numbers. It gives us a true picture of the rate of suspensions within each group, making disproportionality much clearer and helping us identify where our efforts should be targeted. Overall, we are seeing decreases in this ratio for each student group from this time last year, with the only exception being the Asian student group, which went up by just over a point. Our largest decreases include a 15.5 point reduction for African American students and an 8-point reduction for Hispanic students. We want to acknowledge that the Black African American student group, while having the largest decreases over the past several quarters, is still an outlier in data compared to the other student groups. Additionally, we continue to work with the Student Support Services Division to support schools in addressing students that are eligible for special education services. Within this presentation, we will share our steps of how we'll be addressing these areas of concern. Slide 10, we moved to discretionary expulsions during the first 3 quarters for the past 5 years. As a reminder, in the Clark County School District, schools must recommend students for expulsion for a number of offenses, including weapons on campus, battery to staff, battery to students, distribution of a controlled substance, and sexual assault. However, this data point in this presentation uses only the state guidelines for mandatory expulsion, which is it is only mandatory to expel students for situations related to a weapon on campus. And expulsion for anything else during this presentation is considered discretionary. The graph displays that schools have processed nearly 80 fewer discretionary expulsions compared to last year. This is an 8% reduction. We want to acknowledge that overall, the past 2 years, schools have reduced expulsions by over 200, which represents that they are engaging their students in the school community, addressing behaviors without pushing them out. Slide 11, again, discretionary expulsions by level. Here we see the middle schools, again, an area of concern, had 418 discretionary expulsions, which is a 12% reduction from last year. High schools demonstrated a reduction of 4%, but again, this is in addition to the 14% they decreased last year. To reiterate again, this is a testament to the work being done by their school leaders to support families and students to change behaviors. Slide 12 demonstrates disproportionality in discretionary expulsions by student groups, again, calculated by discretionary expulsions per student, or by student group per 1,000 students. The data shows that with the exception of students eligible for special education, which increased by less than a point, we have seen a decrease in the discretionary expulsion ratio for all other student groups, ranging from a 2% to 19% decrease. As with suspensions, we acknowledge that Black African American student group is an outlier compared to other student groups. Slide 13 is the slide that traditionally is used to showcase how the Clark County School District compares to other districts. As we've discussed, this is a difficult metric to display due to the variety of ways that districts can code disciplinary actions. But as we've mentioned, we look forward to working with you to adjust the presentation template to provide you with data more aligned with what your expectations are. We did, after the briefings, look to see if we could provide you with at least Washoe County data because there might be some similarity in state coding. In reaching out to their data division, they did inform us that their schools have until June 30th to validate their data, so we look forward to bringing this to you in the end of the year presentation. And now, Madam President, with your permission, I'd like to turn it over to the brilliant Dr. Scavella and the amazing Ms. March to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, Sam Scavella for the record, Assistant Superintendent. Our primary challenge continues to be shifting mindsets and practices towards restorative approaches while maintaining student and staff safety as the highest priority. Schools are making meaningful progress by implementing restorative practices that promote positive school climates. These practices address undesired behaviors through accountability, collective dialogue, and meaningful action. This shift fosters personal responsibility for behavior and the repair of harm caused by those behaviors while moving away from punitive or exclusionary discipline, unless necessary to better support the academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs of all students. When we look at our successes, the implementation of our restorative disciplinary protocols has resulted in measurable positive changes district-wide. Exclusionary practices have decreased across all school levels and among nearly every student group. By the end of the third quarter, 27,819 restorative resolutions were documented with this year-end data, totaling 28,056 restorative approaches utilized this year. That is a total of 132% increase since the district adopted restorative practices in the 2021-22 school year. Every school now has 3 to 5 educators trained in the fundamental theory and processes of restorative practices, which comprises their restorative leadership teams. Additionally, 249 schools have restorative leadership teams led by culturally inclusive champions who are educators and administrators who have completed 33 hours of professional learning, including a Training of Trainers course through a partnership with the International Institute for Restorative Practices. These leaders are equipped with the curriculum, tools, and expertise to train and support staff in implementing restorative practices effectively at the school level. The tiered school support framework, developed in alignment with our MTSS framework, was established in response to concerns identified at the middle school level last year. This framework delivers coordinated multi-departmental resources to targeted schools and has already produced positive outcomes. Notably, suspensions have decreased at nearly all participating schools, and approximately 50% of the original identified schools no longer fall within the range requiring continued support. Another significant success was the collaborative effort between the district's MTSS department and the Nevada Department of Education. Over 100 schools were supported in completing a self-inventory to identify root causes contributing to the increased use of exclusionary practices. This reflective process also helps schools develop targeted action steps to include in their 25-26 school improvement plans. So when we look at our lessons learned, as we continue to prioritize this work district-wide, we see clearly there are 2 takeaways. One, sustainable change requires a strong commitment to MTSS systems that holistically address students' academic, social-emotional, and behavioral needs. This includes intentional use of restorative approaches and resolutions that emphasize accountability, healing, and relationship building rather than exclusion. This work, as we know, is very complex and cannot be done in isolation. Our school leaders need to be surrounded by consistent support, both from central office teams and their school supervisors, to foster lasting positive change in school culture and discipline practices. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Brandy March, and let her take it over from there.
Thank you, Dr. Scavella. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, Brandy March, Director of Multi-Tiered System of Supports, for the record. For our next steps, in alignment with our MTSS framework, we continue to offer the tiered school support at the identified middle schools to address student discipline. We're adjusting and expanding the number of middle schools included in our focus group for the upcoming school year. In June, as a part of our partnership with the Nevada Department of Education, our schools with high levels of suspensions will submit their results from a self-inventory tool called the Tiered Fidelity Inventory. This research-based monitoring tool allows them to measure the fidelity of their own practices, helping them identify concrete action steps to address student discipline in the upcoming school year. In July, the Education Services Division will offer district-wide professional learning for school administrators to expand and reinforce best practices when dealing with student discipline. By November, identified schools will include addressing high levels of suspension as a part of their 25-26 school improvement plan within their school connectedness goal. And finally, we will continue in the fall with our student town halls that include a focus on lessons learned and next steps for the leadership at each of those locations. This process is really key in capturing student voice and in the decision-making process. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to receive any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you so much. Trustee Barron?
Oh, I didn't turn off the thing. Thank you, Madam President. I had to retrain myself to hit the two buttons at the same time. Thank you very much for this presentation. I come into this position of trustee at a very interesting time, having kind of recently been, it was only like last May that I bid farewell, to the classroom. And I have to admit, I really saw a change in the last 3 or 4 years as a teacher. In the bad old days, it was really easy to just go ahead and take students, expel them, they'd go off to an opportunity school, and by the end of the school year, we'd have a whole bunch of kids back, at Rancho High School from all over the district. It seemed like it was just really easy to go ahead and just throw people away. And, it's the easiest thing is just go ahead and banish kids, throw them away. But really, if you've been around anybody, especially youngsters, there's never any one thing here. I've very rarely had. Yeah, I had the occasional kid who had, monitoring device on them, right? But they were very, very few. What I found was my next to last boss, she introduced social workers. That was the name for them that she paid for out of her own budget. But they were actually trained psychologists. They were actually licensed psychologists. And I have to admit, it didn't say, I don't know the statistics, but it didn't seem that, when you see the list of expulsed kids, we didn't have that many, right, at Rancho. It seemed like it really helped out. Maybe in the future, I guess my big question is, maybe in the future, we could parse out where we have nice wraparound services like communities and schools, along with whatever investment the site might have, say with these so-called social workers that might be trained therapists, like a few people that I know and respect very highly. Perhaps in the future, if you might be able to get even some colloquial information as to how important that might be. Again, time and time again, it seems that there's always, a mental health aspect to behavior. I applaud that you're able to get this information, that you get it back to us. I think we're definitely in the right direction. But if we could parse out just a little bit of those things, what schools are achieving a little bit higher, because maybe they have a secret sauce that can be shared with the rest of the district. Thank you, Madam President, and that's kind of like my question-ish.
Thank you for that suggestion. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. One of my first questions is there any discretionary expulsions in elementary school?
I apologize, Trustee Zamora. There's no expulsions at the elementary level.
Okay,
in
I just
general.
didn't see it's not on the data. The second question I have, so I got a little ahead of myself. So in the slide where we talk about successes, there is a section where we mention, there we go, the last bullet point on success. I read that the partners have already identified some action steps for us to take. And then in the following slide, it says that the next steps is for us to do a survey there we go, partnering with the Nevada Department of Education to ensure schools with high levels of suspension submit the results of self-inventory tool to identify action steps to address. Are we talking about the same thing? Or are those two different things? Are we reinventing the wheel?
Trustee Zamora, thank you so much for that question. Brandy March for the record. Those are the same items. Essentially, it just fits within the timeline. So could you go back one slide, please? Thank you. With this bullet point for the successes, part of the tiered fidelity inventory, that monitoring tool that I spoke about, is a survey in which the schools conducted that self-inventory. And so those have been done. And now, based on the inventory results, they are using that to help drive their action items and their action plans. And that information is due on June 30th.
Okay, because I know we're at the end of June already.
Yeah.
A follow-up to that. What are we thinking are the steps to hold ourselves accountable that those action steps are being completed?
Trustee Zamora, thank you so much for the question. Brandy March for the record. That's a fantastic question to make sure. As a part of their school improvement plan, the schools identify monitoring action items for each of those steps. So for example, if they chose an item to really identify school-wide expectations, just broadly speaking, then they would have items in their school improvement plan in order to say, these are the monitoring pieces and the timeline for that. So typically 3 times a year, there's an interim assessment for each of those items.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Straffigan.
Okay. So during our briefing, in fairness, we didn't have the presentation. No one's fault, but now we have it. So I do have a lot of questions, and I know I tend to have questions that go a little deep in the weeds, not for operational pieces, but for systemic coherence. So I want to start backwards with slide 15, because I want to thank you first and foremost, the fact that you have 3 departments working in collaboration and tandem is key. And that is the silos that we're breaking, and I'm looking at our new superintendent. I'm sure that was a past practice, but going forward, I think it's really, it's essential for us seeing some difference. So thank you for that. So on 15, the student town halls. So on a past presentation, we had surveys of students expressing whether they felt safe at school. And I brought up the point that there was a big discrepancy between the district average and our African American subgroup. And what I want to ask you, is there conversations about, when we're having student town halls, are we talking to those students at those schools with the higher incidence? Because if they're not feeling safe at their own school, is there a correlation between the behaviors that are being escalated? And so I just want to see if we can look at those schools, and if that is something with that self-inventory, if we're actually surveying the students for their perspective. And I'll pause.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Esparza-Straffigan. Sam Scavella for the record. When we have student town halls, we begin with a planning meeting. And with that planning meeting, we identify schools based on the discipline data, based on culture data. And so the process to select students comes through that meeting with the principals and their leadership teams. And we look at students who are doing exceptionally well. We look at students who are struggling in terms of academically, behaviorally. We look at students that struggle with their attendance. So we get a real good picture of all students in that school. And through that process of the restorative conversation, we make sure it's a safe place, so students have an opportunity to really speak and we can hear their voice. And with those town halls, we really get information that's critical to next steps for serving those students in regards to providing some of those wraparound services that Trustee Barron was speaking about, so that we can get a good grasp of what are the needs and how do we fulfill those needs in regards to ensuring that we're addressing those critical issues that hold them back from success at schools.
Thank you so much, Brandy March, for the record. Just to further answer your question about the tiered fidelity inventory, the monitoring tool that the schools are using, there are many questions incorporating and asking schools if they are incorporating student voice, student engagement, and as well as whether or not what the school is doing is working for those students. And we do a random sampling of student interviews as well as part of the process, collecting walkthrough data. Some of the questions also ask a lot about student engagement as well as family engagement and faculty and staff engagement. And so really looking at what are the processes, the procedures, and the systems that the school has in place in order to ensure that they are getting that student voice. And finally, there's even guidance and questions on whether or not they're including students and family and community members in their teaming structures. So thinking of a leadership team similar to an SOT, are they using that input from those various stakeholders in order to make decisions?
One more, Madam President. I know we have a lot of other trustees, but again, here we go. So the other one I want to talk about is, okay. So the discretionary expulsions on slide 10 and through 12. I've heard some of the families express frustration because of the fact that discretionary means that a principal can decide, ultimately that goes through the process of appeal or not for them to be expelled. That sometimes at one school, a student may be expelled for battery on another student, right? But in another school, because they're implementing and providing MTSS, that is not necessarily the outcome for that particular student at that particular school. So my question is, because of the fact that your division is a part of the process, they see all the schools. And so are there conversations from your division when it hits their desk to say, listen, how are we implementing or intervening? Is that part of the process to have that deeper conversation in the real time of when that student is being put out, so that there's not disparity between one school giving a consequence that's not the same at the other?
Thank you for the question. It is something that we are absolutely cognizant of. So just to give you an idea of the process, there are 3 region behavior directors that work directly through ESD. They are the code of conduct experts. They meet and hold all the first level of appeal conferences, but they also are, for expulsions, schools reach out to them even before they do the referral packet. And that's where they try to give guidance and they support of here's what the code of conduct says, here's what best practices are, here's what schools around you do, here's some alternatives if that's appropriate. So that coaching does occur. Of course, the principal with discretionary still can have the right to proceed, but then it goes through us as well. And so we'll go ahead and we adjudicate them down. We deal with school supervisors to really make sure that the ones that are making it through the due process are ones that have been vetted at multiple levels. But that is something that it does occur, and we're streamlining it to improve that.
Thank you. Trustee Dominguez?
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate that, Trustee Esparza-Strappigan. I think that if I could expand a little bit on that, we had discussed this during our trustee briefing, and I think it's really important to discuss is that a lot of teachers, from what I hear, is that they feel like the schools are being penalized for these behavioral numbers, and so they believe that maybe the principals, admin don't want to place that kid under a suspension or actually label that action as some kind of behavioral problem, and so they're sent back. Can you talk to us a little more about that?
Yeah, Trustee Dominguez, thank you for bringing that up because that was an important piece of the briefing. So in general, what we found and what will definitely be a part of the training that we do again in the summer is it's the unknown, right? The teacher sends the kid out, sees that student back, assumes nothing happened, and maybe there's not that communication that's effective within the school site. So that's really what we're attacking. We don't see that schools are not addressing behaviors or dealing with them, potentially with more restorative first for minor behaviors, which is part of our goals. But I think it's that communication piece back that we need to improve upon, and we're going to work with our schools on that.
That's good to hear. And then one of the things I've also heard is that maybe do we do any de-escalation training with our teachers? I know probably our CCSD PD, but or do we do anything with our teachers?
Go ahead, Sam.
So we have different types of training. We have restorative training, we have cultural competency training, and also culturally and linguistically responsive training. And that gives teachers an opportunity to identify student behaviors as whether or not this is a misbehavior or is this a cultural behavior. So when I understand that, then I know teachers know how to respond effectively and appropriately. And then one critical part of this is teaching students situational appropriateness. Yeah. Because there are times when behaviors are cultural behaviors that come into the classroom, but they're not appropriate for a school environment. So that's important for teachers to be able to have that skill set and that connection with students to be able to teach those skills.
To identify, I appreciate that. And this is a difficult one. This was something that hurt me as a mom to see. It was a teacher that was was severely assaulted in the classroom a few years ago. I think it was about 2-3 years ago. And from my understanding, the student didn't have anything in the record as far as like behavioral. I haven't looked at directly, but that's just from what I'm hearing. There had to have been something before that led to that severe attack. to that teacher in her classroom. What is the misconnection that we're missing between labeling something as far as like destruction of property, attack, assault on a student, or maybe something gang-related? Where are we missing that connection?
Trustee Dominguez, thank you for the question. And so I think I understand the question. And so, again, part of the region directors is they coach schools. Schools will contact them, like, we have this situation, and they, again, to make sure it's consistent between these three, which are the experts on the code of conduct, to make sure they're advising schools on what that coding should be and where it should be. In situations like that, which, again, high-level situations that occur, we always look to see were there clues or were there things that could have been indicators, which is part of our process. Just to kind of also go back to the de-escalation, since you mentioned that as well, there is, through our emergency management department, they do true de-escalation with campus monitors, with front office. Hasn't quite expanded that to a full licensed personnel, but that is something that the district does offer as well. But as far as coding, that is part of our processes with our checks and balances.
Perfect, thank you.
Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. And some of my questions have already been answered by my colleagues that have asked them. And I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. McPartland, Dr. Scavella, and Ms. March for the presentation today. So some of this has already been, so I want to ask for some clarifications because some of it has been answered. Going back to slides 15, I'm sorry, on the self-inventory tool, I think Trustee Zamora had asked about that in the correlation that's the same instrument we're talking about with the state. Did I understand you correctly that on the self-inventory tool, there are specific categories within that tool that these questions are being asked?
Trustee Cavazos, thank you so much for that question. Brandy March for the record. The short answer is yes. The tiered fidelity inventory tool, that monitoring tool, is really broken up into 4 scales or 4 categories of items dealing with leadership, strategies, or practices, systems, and then finally data and evaluation. And so as part of that, each of those categories or types of questions work towards a lot of different opportunities for our leadership teams to really dive into all of those different things to see what they can do to really help the students specifically in those areas.
Okay, thank you very much for the elaboration. Also still on page 15, going back to the town halls, and Mr. McPartland knows that's one of my favorite things to ask questions about. And you had already talked about this, as far as on, I believe, Trustee, as far as the Stoffrigan's question about, trying to get to the students that are not feeling safe and how we are making that connection. What is the actual, we don't see those town halls. So is there an actual structure that is unique to the school where the town hall is being held, or is it basically a consistent structure for each school?
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos, for the question. And Dr. Scavella may want to jump in since he does lead them. But so there's a structure for the preparation, right? They develop a lesson plan. They look at the data, what are our key indicators that we want to address. Once we get into the town hall, which again has 20 students, 10 staff members, that kind of breakdown and a good representation of the school, that's when it kind of can take on a life. And Dr. Scavella and his staff are so skilled at really pulling out, like when students are really talking about one thing, and it could be safety of students that are being disciplined, or also the safety of students that are experiencing and seeing someone else being disciplined. So those are things that are very personalized by the school, and that's what Dr. Scavella's staff brings out.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so Trustee Cavazos, it's important for us to understand that in those town halls, though it's a safe place for students to express how they are really perceiving school in regards to is it meeting their needs. So one question that we always ask also is what adult-student connections are there in the school? Because a lot of schools leverage those connections for performance in regards to behavior, academic effort, and social, emotional, connections as well. So those town halls really give us an opportunity to really hear students' concerns, as well as get ideas from students and how we can do better and how we can really improve the culture and climates in our schools. So that's a both win-win for us in those town halls.
Thank you so much. And so it sounds like with these student town halls, the student voices are the most important. And the town halls, just to clarify, these are requested by the principals?
Thank you for that question. It's actually twofold. So we do have principals that, in looking at their own data and the culture and climate of their campus, request it. And then there are some that are identified by the student disproportionality or student suspension data. So it's both.
Okay. And that was a constituent question they want to know. I know I've asked that of Mr. McPartland before. One last follow-up real quickly. Looking at the restorative, we as trustees, one of our duties is we do serve on the expulsion review hearings, and we are trained in the practices. So we see a lot of these things coming, and every case is unique. Every student's case is unique. Is there any consistency that you see with any particular restorative justice practice that you really see some results? Maybe you're hearing from the principals or you're hearing from the parents, the kids. And if you don't have that, that's okay. It's kind of jumped in there with that question.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Cavazos. One practice that we're really seeing a lot of is teachers' ability to use those effective statements to build those relationships in the classroom, as well as using effective questions and having small impromptu conversations to resolve those everyday conflicts that happen in the classroom, in the cafeteria, in between change of classes. Because if one thing is we have to get in front of the referral process, and every behavior doesn't result in a referral, but that referral process really generates the disproportionality once that referrals are submitted. So teachers are really, really getting comfortable with using those restorative processes in order to resolve those conflicts before a need for a behavioral referral. So we're hearing a lot about that in the schools. We're hearing a lot of positive things about that, and also the restorative circles and the classroom building circles that they're having at the Tier 1 level. So that is really a process that gives the students an opportunity to even reset before a conflict results, and something that's going to result in a behavioral disciplinary issue.
Thank you so much. It really sounds like we are going in a very proactive direction with some good results. So I thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Trustee Satori?
Hi, thank you. Yes, thank you for the presentation and for all of your hard work in moving the needle in the right direction. Thank you so much. My question is regarding the student suspension. So this 19,000 plus, do we have data on how many of those are repeat offenders? And are we doing any specific more targeted intervention towards those repeat offenders, such as mentorships and things like that? That was my curiosity there.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Satori. So absolutely, that is the recidivism is a huge priority within ESD. The region behavior directors, they provide data to the school supervisors to, again, work with schools to identify the students that are repeat. What is the other MTSS components that we're bringing in for those students? Because, again, just putting the kids out repeatedly is not going to resolve anything. So that is a huge part of our efforts, for sure.
Do you know a percentage, so like of 19,000, how many actual, do we know how many students that is?
I don't have that with me, but that's something we can pull.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Trustee Johnson?
Thanks for the presentation. You all, I really appreciate the way this moved from the briefings to here. It was really helpful to see the evolution of the presentation. I had three questions, and one will be a follow-up to the second. On slide, I can't remember the slide it was in particular. One more back, two more back, right here. So slide 12 of 17. So there was a significant drop in suspensions for students who identify as American Indian, Alaska Native. Do you happen to know what caused that significant? I mean, that's more than 2 times the amount of drop in any other category. So I don't know.
Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. So again, the American Indian, Alaska Native, that is one of our smallest student groups. And so 1 or 2 students can skew that data, and that's what we saw in that.
Okay, yeah. That's helpful, thanks. And then the other question I was going to ask, it's clear that the training that you've done around MTSS systems have been effective, because across the board, both suspensions and expulsion and discretionary expulsions have reduced. And there's still a very large variance between the rate of black student suspension, the rate of students who have disabilities. Their levels of both expulsions and suspensions is still significantly greater than the larger populations. Do you think there needs to be specific training to support our team to be able to reduce that gap faster?
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. We do cultural competency training district-wide, and that training really helps us to understand how to respond to different students and their backgrounds, and that really helps to equalize the playing field in terms of how we respond to behaviors systemically and systematically across the board. So that helps with one student, per se, gets a conversation, another student gets a referral. So when we understand how to respond to different types of behaviors, and we can do that consistently, then that will help with being able to provide those interventions and provide that response that, again, de-escalates the students and de-escalate those behaviors.
And the reason why I asked the question, I always want to think about what we can do as a body to help support. And so immediately I went to, do we have the resources, the financial resources to elevate that training, to make sure that we can do it 2 times as fast? Because if black students are being suspended and then discretionarily expelled at 2 times the rate of other students, right, like that to me would lead to larger gaps in academic achievement, feelings of unsafe, et cetera. And so if we don't have what's required in terms of financial resources to support extensive amounts of training, I think that's where a board can activate figuring out how do we get the resources that are required. And so I guess the question then is, and maybe this is to you, Superintendent, do you think we have the resources that are required to elevate that training? Because I want to make sure that we're able to reduce that gap faster to then support academic achievement in those 2 student groups, which happen to be our 2 lowest achieving groups in the district.
Wrong one. Thank you for the question, Trustee Johnson. I will never sit here and say that we have enough resources.
Okay.
I mean, given where we are at as a state and a school district, we always can use more resources. How we use, I shouldn't say never. One day I would love to say that, hopefully in my lifetime.
Mine too.
Yes. But what I will say is that focusing and making sure that the resources that we have are targeted, right, specific. Was in a conversation earlier today of it's one thing to say all students, but when you're looking at data like this, you need to name it, right? Those numbers should not be. And so to your point of making sure that the resources that we have are directed to fixing that data is what this amazing team, and since I do have the mic, I do want to specifically call out Mr. McPartland, Dr. Scavella, and future Dr. Is it still future doctor? Okay. She's very close.
Make it happen.
Dr. Mills in their collaboration, which was mentioned earlier. But we as a school district were also recognized by the state. When I was in my other role, we recognized the Clark County School District for the work specifically around MTSS and making sure, because our children cannot learn if they're not in the classroom. And so not only the survey data that you have been asking about, which the principals and everyone takes very seriously, it's a self-assessment, but they are taking action on it, and that action improved academics in those schools that implemented with fidelity. So it's an entire system that we're looking at, and yes, that data will change quickly based on the allocation of resources, making sure that those numbers change.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for the work, Tom. Again, I know it's hard work, and I want to make sure that we can do our part to make sure you have what you need to do this work even better.
Thank you. And I know I have Trustee Biasotti in the queue. I'll get to you in a second. Trustee Esparza-Straffigan? Okay. Trustee Biassadi, are you, I believe you're on the line, correct?
Yes, I am here. Thank you, President Bustamante.
Please ask your question.
I have a question. Thank you for your work. What systems are being used to get to the root cause of the misbehavior?
Thank you, Trustee Biassadi, for your question. Brandy March for the record. One of the tools that we're using, we've spoke about several times now, is the tiered fidelity inventory tool. And that tool really focuses on the core elements or high quality elements in Tier 1 that schools can focus on to really improve all of the different structures that we've talked about here today. The leadership, the teaming, the systems, the practices that we have in place, and then finally the data to evaluate if our system is working. And so as teams that we worked with throughout this process in the last 6 weeks, was really eye-opening for recognizing there were some gaps in the systems that they had in place. And so they said, oh, okay, we know now we're going to focus on these things, again, which then drives their action items that we've talked about earlier in the presentation. When schools are implementing, as Superintendent Ebert was speaking on just a minute ago, when schools are implementing these elements, these core elements that are really research-based and shown to promote Tier 1 systems and structures, we see the exclusionary discipline go down, it reduces. When schools are focused on Tier 1 elements, safe and supportive, inclusive environments are created. They're using data to inform their actions and drive their decisions. Really thinking about not just the Tier 2 and Tier 3 issues, as Trustee Satori talked about with recidivism. Obviously, that is a concern, but how can we implement positive and proactive measures in order to really solve the problems before they start? I think that's a lot of what we've spoke on today. And so I think that the tiered fidelity inventory is a fantastic way to start those conversations and to help teams really drive what they want to do in order to support their students from the ground up, from that foundational level of Tier 1.
And so what I'm asking is basically a more specific explanation of what measures are being taken. You talked about the measures in TFI, but what measures are being taken to address the root cause? Are you engaging parents? Are you following up with parents?
Thank you, Trustee Biassadi. So again, the entire theme that we hope we are getting across is we are addressing serious behaviors appropriately. Minor behaviors is where we want to address through restorative practices, through interventions to change student behaviors. And that does include, as we talk about, where it takes a village and it takes all of our departments. And so when we think about like our wraparound services and psych services, and so that's where we have students being seen by social workers and counselors, mental health professionals, family advocates, getting the family involved, with a mentoring system at a lot of schools where we really try to dig into it rather than just pushing the student back and the behaviors continue. Along that same line, just to kind of go back to Trustee Dominguez, because again, as we have broken down silos, and I'm getting support from people in the crowd, thank you so much. So when we go back to professional learning opportunities that Trustee Johnson talked about, so we do have a district-wide professional learning plan that as we bring school data forward, we're able to see what are all the things that we offer as a district and bring it to schools for professional learning that way. Crisis prevention, they do have de-escalation for support staff as well as for license. And then Student Support Services Division, they do have trauma-informed de-escalation as well. So 2 more for de-escalation specifically I wanted to mention.
Okay, and thank you so much for that detailed answer. I did have one other question regarding restorative policies. I know according to the data here on slide 7, I believe, yeah. There's a significant suspension rate increase from 2020 to 2021 to 2021, 2022. So it jumps, I mean, it's hard not to really narrow in on it and find out something drastically different had to have happened from those, 2 set of years. And wasn't it 2021, the year that restorative discipline policies were implemented in CCSD?
Thank you, Trustee Biasotti. So I do have the slide up. So again, you are correct. It's a huge jump that we see, but that is actually when we went from the lockdown, the shutdown during COVID to having students back on campus. So that the first one with the 271, that was when students were actually at home for nearly the entire year. So that's what that discrepancy is for.
Oh, so it would have been better, I think, if we could see 2019 to 2020 before, because then, yeah, that jump shouldn't even be really taken into account, the 271. I would like to see the graph, before that. And I guess my question is, do you see any data that reflects a positive impact from restorative policies in general, not MTSS, which I do think is yielding better results, but just restorative policies?
Thank you, Trustees Bisietta. This is Sam Scavella for the record. Yes, in 2021-22, our restorative protocols were introduced. At that time, the only restorative process that we had in the district was basically peer mediation, and there were 2,900 restorative resolutions used during that school year. The next year, we experienced through the restorative professional learning an increase of 84%, which we went from 2,900 uses of restorative resolutions to 15,000 restorative resolutions. From that year to the next year, we went up another 24%, and that was the school year before last, which we utilized, school administrators utilized a little over 20,000 restorative resolutions. And this year, our restorative resolutions went up another 27%, which represents a 132% increase to 28,056 restorative resolutions. What that does is, for the minor offenses, we still increase the accountability and the responsibility for behavior while we keep students in school, but at the same time hold them accountable for those behaviors and reach and impact them with meaningful action during those restorative conversations. So that attributed greatly to the decline that we've seen in suspensions, because administrators are now utilizing those restorative resolutions at a higher level.
Thank you for that. And just with all this talk of restorative discipline and policies, I would like to see the numbers, the trends that we had before restorative policies, because I don't think we're getting a fair assessment with the 2020 and then on. That's all showing us restorative policies in place. But the data before that is what I would like to see, just because I know there was a reference made of, how removing students back in the day was easier to suspend them. They were essentially, quote unquote, thrown away. But didn't we see lower rates of violence and suspension when those practices were in place? So that is my concern. I would like to restore what was working. And if restorative policies are not yielding good outcomes, this graph shows us it's more or less the same numbers. So I would like to see us take an approach that yields better and faster results. But thank you for your work.
Thank you. And we have 3 more trustees, and then we'll go to public comment. Trustee Sparza-Straffigan.
So what I want to celebrate is what you said earlier, and I want to also preface that I did participate as a participant in the cultural online virtual training. There were about 600 teachers a couple of weeks ago, and it was very insightful for me as a trustee to be able to hear some of the conversations that were deep, getting to root causes, people acknowledging that we need to have and develop relationships. We do need to repair harm. We also need to understand that the goal is to keep the kids in our schools. And so I just want to applaud the division for that, because 600 teachers in the summer is a task. So my ask is this. The data, Trustee Satori already, it's like we didn't even talk, but it's like we talked, but we didn't. the actual duplicity of those particular offenses. I think if we had that a little bit more definitive for us, it would put a lot more in context, and I think it would be much of a bigger celebration when you see maybe it's certain students that are choosing certain choices on a repeat offense. And I think that would put a little bit more in context for us. One of the other things I wanted to bring up is I had conversations with administrators. And what they appreciated is like maybe their principals get training or the teams get training. But oftentimes, the students that are making poor choices often see certain levels of administrators or people at the site. They are asking for potentially PLCs, like I'm talking about between student success coordinators or between assistant principals, talking like you're doing with the student town halls, having access to schools that are implementing MTSS very successfully, or RJ, I call restorative practices, very much so. And they said they feel like they're in silos. So that was a comment that I've heard repeatedly. The last thing I want to bring up is we're talking a lot about adults. I want to talk about the students. And I know Superintendent and I've had deep conversations. I keep coming back to the students. At some point, I know we don't have the full capacity, but we would love in the future, in my wish list of life, getting to students to be trained on self-awareness, regulation, having strategies, how to cope, because I think if we can get to that level at some point, and maybe we can implement it somehow in our town hall as a part 2. We have a great student advisory council. They would be great ambassadors if we could add that into their curriculum. I think that would be something that we need to think about in the future. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Did you want to respond, Ms. March?
If that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Straffigan, thank you so much. Hopefully you don't mind. I really, in listening to your comments, very excited to tell you about one of the collaboratives we are using to address that PLC type model that you spoke of. We have now moving into our 4th year of what's called the elementary school support model. It's a collaborative of elementary school principals and their teams to really share what's working in the elementary schools. We meet approximately every 6 weeks at a different elementary school each time, and the host elementary school is able to present to the team that's there, the other leaders, what's working, their story, their struggles at the beginning, what they're working on right now, the challenges they're facing, and how they're working to implement. They share resources. Also included in that is what's called a shared space. It's a room, formerly a classroom, that this school has transitioned into a multi-purpose use space. It has a lot of centers, like I related a lot of preschool, like a preschool classroom with an art area and although it's not preschool related, but the students are able to go in there to really celebrate and acknowledge their positive behavior. So they earn time in this shared space in which they can have some yoga time. They have yoga mats. There's an imagination station play. There is an art center, a reading area. And they don't spend a long time, right? We want them in class learning. So it's 15 or 20 minutes on a rotating basis when they've earned that. Sometimes that is working towards academic goal. Sometimes it's behavior goal. Sometimes it's celebrating the citizen of the month. And so this collaborative, this elementary school model collaborative, is really a positive structure. And word got out that our elementary schools were doing this. And so this year, we just started the middle school support model. And in a similar fashion, we have 14 middle schools that are working on participating in this pilot program, doing similar work. Not necessarily with a shared space at this time, but really focused on that collaborative piece and building on what's working. In our elementary school support model, we're moving up towards 75 schools this coming year.
Thank you for that.
Sorry. Can
Go
I
ahead,
just
Dr.
extend a
Scavella,
little
go.
bit? Also, we have trained our over 300 students in student-led restorative practices through our BSU conferences, and we also have 6 model schools: Treem, Bell, Palo, Mojave, So in order for a school to meet or master restorative practices, part of that, in that rubric, our restorative practices rubric, is that we engage students in student-led restorative practices. Students become a part of the restorative leadership team. Parents become a part of the restorative leadership team. And the goals that they develop, from 3 to 5 goals, are focused on building relationships. They're focused on reducing disproportionality, reducing discipline, addressing the root causes of those behaviors in those schools. So those are going to be beacons to professional development across the district, and those are represented in all regions.
That's awesome. Okay, 2 trustees left. Trustee Henry?
It's almost like you were reading my mind because I was going to ask about that. So for you to jump in, talking about the restorative practices and the student-led, I appreciate that. Just looking at this report and looking at the numbers, you know, is startling. Just seeing the numbers for our African-American students. I wanted to know how else are we engaging the community and families? I know you spoke a little bit about it, Mr. McPartland, but how else is the district getting out into the community? But also, you also mentioned with mentors at the school level. Are there mentorship organizations that you're currently working with and thinking about expanding?
Trustee Henry, thank you for the question. So the first part with family engagement, again, as we talk about the different partnerships we have in the district, we work very closely with the Family Engagement Division with chronic absenteeism and student discipline. As far as when we talk about reaching into our community partners, some have been mentioned tonight: Communities in Schools, Boys Town, Invo. So we do activate with a lot of community partners as well. In fact, as we try to come up with, when we have businesses that come through, like, hey, how can I help? And we were going to come up with this menu list of, here's how much it costs to bring in a Communities in Schools mentor or a Boys in Schools mentor onto this campus. Like, that's what we're looking for. So it is a huge piece of what we do. Obviously, it's something we want to improve on. We want to make sure parents are involved before we have major behaviors, when we're still addressing it at the minor level. But certainly we activate with our partners.
And just to follow up, and thank you for mentioning Communities in Schools. And I noticed that you all mentioned the larger nonprofits or those that are in schools. How are you engaging those African-American-led nonprofits and mentorship organizations to support our students?
Okay, Dr. Scavella will follow up. So yeah, this is a concern, because as we deal with some of our community partners, they're addressing the struggle they have in kind of getting in to be approved to work with us. So certainly it's something we're aware of the groups. We're communicating with the leadership to work out, like, what is it that's causing this obstacle for people that want to support us. So I'm aware of that, and I'm actively working on it.
In addition, we meet with our community partners quarterly on the Superintendent's Anti-Racism, Equity, and Inclusion Access Committee. We address the systemic inequities across schools. We look at data. We pull from their expertise and experience and connections to inform our school supervisors and as well as the district leaders as to what should we be doing to support our schools, support our administrators, support our educators in addressing the disproportionality that we're having in our schools. So that's something that's on the forefront. We look at that data consistently. We provide an annual report. I think the last one that we presented to the board was in December. We'll be producing that report yearly so that we can really look at how are we collectively addressing these systemic issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will end with Trustee Dominguez and then move to public comment.
Thank you, Madam President. So one of the things I noticed, one of my colleagues had touched on, but nobody asked about, was the behavioral schools. And, we know that, obviously suspensions, sending a kid home isn't working as well as we would like it to. What are we doing as far as utilizing our behavioral schools that we have?
Absolutely, Trustee Dominguez. So such an important piece. This would be Peterson Academic Center, South Academic Center, and Cowan Academic Center, which are within my portfolio of schools. And so one of the things that we've really worked is to utilize the funding sources that they already have within their budgets to expand mental health supports and to bring in social workers, to bring in mentors. We've done a great, like we have Chef Jeff at Peterson, and he brings in leadership trainings there. They have advisory coursework within the schools. So we really are trying to make it from, instead of just being like this place they go and then they return to schools without any kind of adjustments, is that's where we're really trying to bring in some leadership, bring in some self-regulation, bring in some supports to get to some of the root causes of what caused them to get there. So that has been a huge shift over the last 2 years, and the 3 principals of those schools are doing a great job of making those adjustments to move us forward.
Thank you. And can you just very quickly just kind of go over like what does it take between a difference between a suspension or getting sent to a behavioral school?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So absolutely. So when we talk about a suspension, that would be a removal from school, a temporary removal from school. For our most severe behaviors, a student may be referred or recommended for referral to one of our academic centers based on geography of what school they would go to, Peterson, South, or Cowan. These are schools where students are at for 9 to 18 weeks. They're fully licensed staff, the same Tier 1 instructional materials, along with some of these additional supports to kind of address some root causes. So it is a longer-term placement. Students are then returned to a comprehensive school when they've successfully completed the program.
Thank you. I would love a tour, by the way, just putting it out there.
I will take you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and move to our public comment. We have one, Ms. Kingsley, if you would please come forth.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Kinsley. I'm the president of My Children's Advocate. I'm here to just have an honest conversation with everyone. We're discussing disciplinary, and yet we're focused on race, which is racist, to say that Asian kids can get to school on time and behave themselves easier than Black children, and acting like it's race. How racist is that? What it is broken homes. I got chased out of here last time for saying this. Single mothers are failing. Single mothers are failing. Kids need to be in 2-parent households, and if not with the 2 parents, at least with the dad. That's what data backs up. Has nothing to do with race. Judge, you can tell you're never gonna get good fruit from a rotten tree. We could see how violent these single mothers are when they chased me out of the room for saying the simple stuff. We need to get back to traditional families. We need to hold the bar high for all students of all colors on how to behave in school. It's not culturally okay to behave in erratic behaviors at school. It's not ever okay. We all have YouTube. We all see how these kids turn out when they leave schools like this. We're failing our kids. We need to hold the parents accountable. We need to be calling CPS on these kids. That's what needs to happen. These kids need therapy, they need their dad, and they need help. And to just sit here and ignore that, like some Disney adult with a pride flag in the school is gonna be able to teach them how to be a man? No, we need to get back to Jesus. We need to get back to traditional families, because that's the only thing that's gonna fix this. None of your teachers are equipped to even teach math and science. These kids are coming out dumb. They're coming out dumb, not knowing how to read cursive, not knowing how to read count back change. It's embarrassing. Our schools are an embarrassment. So I'm going to take this moment. Dear Lord Jesus, please come into these people's hearts and minds all across Nevada. Fix these broken families and get these kids into loving homes. These kids need therapy. They need to know Jesus so that they can learn to forgive their failing parents who can't keep a family together. You're failing your kids if you can't keep your family together. Does anyone not know that? Does anyone not know that kids need both parents in the home? Does anyone not know that when you watch YouTube and watch the cop cams, that all those kids are coming from single moms? We see what's happening. And to blame it on race is racist. Shame on CCSD. Shame on all of you for even counting race instead of going, what's so broken in these children's homes that this is how they come to school and behave?
Thank you so much. With that, ends our public comment. I'm going to go ahead and entertain a motion to accept the report as presented. Trustee Johnson.
I will motion to accept the report as presented.
Thank you. Trustee Barron.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Will you please cast your votes? Trustee Biassadi.
Aye.
Okay, with that, it passes 6-0. We'll go ahead and move to item 4.01. This is notice of intent for Clark County School District Regulation 3312. Mr. Casey, please proceed when you're ready.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, Mike Casey for the record. I am joined with Chris Blake, Director of Purchasing. Tonight we bring before you a notice of intent to revise Regulation 3312. In 2019, the Nevada State Legislature did revise NRS 332, essentially increasing the competitive procurement threshold to 100,000. We are proposing to revise Section 1B, subsection 1 and 2, increasing the competitive procurement threshold to 100,000, as well as board approval and alignment with NRS. That is the extent of the proposed revisions.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the trustees? Trustee Cavazos. Before that, Trustee Cavazos, I just want to make sure if you didn't fill out a public speaker card, you do so now. I didn't see any. Okay. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. I see now, though, that there are other trustees in the queue. I actually was ready to make a motion to approve 4.01, Notice of Intent, Clark County School District Regulation Changes to 3312.
I will accept that and wait for other questions. Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you. I guess I don't have more of a question. I have more of a discussion that I'd like to engage in. So with my fellow colleagues, you know, it has been a lot of learning through this process. And as I made in my statement for the consent agenda, it is our obligation to make sure that we are holding the district accountable and making sure that a lot of the contracts coming through are being reviewed. And at this time, the process is just, it's not functioning. You know, with respect, President and Vice President, you guys have to make a decision on what is briefed to us. And if the decision is not to be briefed, if an item is not seen as something important, I don't want to say important, but it's as priority, then we're not briefed and we're asked to submit an email and then to wait for an answer. Last time I did that, which was, I get my days mixed up because we're in the summer right now, but it was literally the day of the meeting when I received a response. And so I'm very concerned that if we extend this to 100,000, that now we're losing track of even more things that we need to be reviewing, that we need to be making sure that we're at least, I don't want to say monitoring, but just making sure that we're seeing what's coming through. And so I have a lot of, I'm really, I guess, financially conservative on this, and I'm very just apprehensive to approve this without having that ability to ask questions during the consent agenda items.
Thank you for your comment. Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan. Trustee Cavazos, are you still in the queue for making the motion, or did you have a question?
I just had a comment, but I was going to go ahead and let Ramona go next.
Go ahead, Trustee Cavazos.
I was just, with respect, I think that Trustee Dominguez is asking a very good question and making a very good point. I just wanted to put in from prior experience and having been on the board for quite a while, we have a huge budget, and I think the intent of this is not to hide information from us, because I have a lot of questions just like you do, And we do have some avenues by which we can ask the superintendent, or we can ask the president to ask the superintendent and go through that. And in respect to your statement about the consent agenda, I think that's extremely important, and you make a valid point. For this particular item, I think this is for expediency. We have such a huge budget, and this has been brought up in prior years where it was said that 50,000, 75,000, and we're checking with other large urban districts. 100,000 is very common. It's a very common number to use at this point. So I just wanted to put that in to give a little bit of elaboration to it.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Esparza-Straffigan.
So it's interesting because I really did look at some other districts as well, just as a comparison. And I hear you, Trustee Dominguez, that it's definitely like our number one responsibility fiscally to be providing that oversight. That is our number one primary job. I don't know that this is something that I would say is a concern for me, because when you put it in context of what billions of dollars that this budget is pushing, looking at prices right now, the way that things are going up, the way that things could potentially go even further, I just hear a lot of frustration sometimes with building principals saying, I can't get this approved. I've got to go through 3 and 4 layers. So I just hope that we can come to an agreement that maybe this is not a big ask to go up to 100,000, so to expedite those frustrations and concerns. And it's relative to large urban districts that have billion-dollar budgets. So I think what I wanted to share is in most recent times, I did put in a request for some items specifically to ask for specific invoices, and I received them in a very quick turnaround, I think, for the first time since I've been on this board. So I thank you for that expedient response, because I am looking, and I think that's our role and responsibility, is to get into the weeds of things and to ask those hard questions. But maybe in our governance policies, there could be a different conversation about how we are going to address the consent agenda in the future.
Yes, I think that's the appropriate spot. Thank you for that mention. Trustee Johnson.
Yeah, I also think it's important for us to always consider our role in terms of the balanced governance, and when we get into operations and when operations becomes, minutia becomes very difficult for us to create a bright line between our work and the superintendent's work. And I want to make sure that the superintendent has and team have the autonomy, and then are accountable to the results of that autonomy. And so, to me, it feels like when we allow for them this ability to make, good, sound decisions based on, the information that they have, it gives them, it treats them as professionals as they are, and allows for them to continue to move forward quickly. The other thing I always think about as it relates to dollar figures is, and Trustee Esparza-Straffigan mentioned it, right, like the proportion at which this is happening. And so a $50,000 limit in terms of the size of the budget, and while every dollar is important, right, I think if we were looking at that at every dime, it does not allow for a system this large to run efficiently. And then when we are inefficient, we're also spending money. So I think it also, we have to think about, are we allowing for our team to really be accountable to their decisions? And then at the end of the day, we see the large budget anyway, and then we can ask questions around, why did you make the choices that you make if those choices didn't lead to the academic outcomes that we wanted? So to stop at every stop sign, to be able to say, like, why are you spending this, as opposed to at larger benchmarks to say, are we on track or off track, and what are you doing to make sure you're staying on track, I think is a good way for us to be thinking about our role and responsibility here.
Thank you. Trustee Dominguez?
Thank you, Madam President. And I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I think everything is built on trust. And, as much as we are a new team, right, the community, parents, and myself as a parent, there's been a few years where we just lack of trust. And so that needs to be built, and that takes time. However, I think we're kind of doing this a little backwards between approving this and not taking care of the governance first. I believe that that governance should be in place prior to doing this. I would be in favor, if you would be willing, is to hold this off till after the governance policies are approved.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Straphagan.
I'm just going to say, I know there's going to be further discussion, but I did want to second the motion.
Thank you. I am going to go to Trustee Barron, or that was his, but Trustee Biassadi, you're on the line. Do you have any questions before I call for the vote?
Yes, has there been a motion to table this?
I have a motion and to approve the notice of intent, and I have a second. That's the motion on the table. And there
Okay.
isn't any public comment. Yeah, thank you for that. So I'm going to call for the vote. The motion is to approve the notice of intent, District Regulation 3312. Please cast your votes. Trustee Biassadi?
Nay.
Okay. I have 4 yeses, 1 no, and that passes. Where's the 2 no? Oh, that's right. Sorry. I have 4-2, and that motion passes. I'll go ahead to go to item 4.02. This is not an action item. This is the 2025 application cycle for proposed charter schools. Mr. Tafoya, when you're ready, please proceed. Oh, hold on for a second. Is that mic on? Try it now.
Test 1.
Oh, there you go.
All right, good. Here we go. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, Dan Tafoya, Director, Office of School Choice. This presentation provides an overview of the 2025 annual charter school application cycle, including statutory requirements and detailed review of proposed charter school applications submitted to the Clark County School District by the State Public Charter School Authority, the City of Henderson, and the City of North Las Vegas. For this cycle, CCSD has evaluated a total of 10 applications from the combined entities. Each application was assessed based on demographics of students proposed to be served, academic geographies, focusing on service to underperforming areas, demonstrated capacity and readiness to meet identified community needs, compliance with city enrollment and location requirements. As a reminder, this presentation is for informational purposes only. The CCSD board is not being asked to approve or deny any of the charter school applicants being discussed today. Slide 2, statutory requirements. This presentation is based on requirements related to new charter school applications. State law requires the SBCSA and municipalities to notify local school districts when charter school applications are received. It also mandates collaboration between the SBCSA, cities, and districts in evaluating these applications. Since this is a new application process for the municipalities, CCSD has been actively working to establish collaborative relationships with those entities. A brief timeline regarding this application cycle is as follows. In May and June, the City of Henderson and North Las Vegas and the SBCSA submitted applications to the Clark County School District to review. In June of 2025, the district reviewed and submitted charter school assessment questionnaires to each individual sponsor. In June 2025, the municipalities submitted the district questionnaires to their board. The city staff notifies the public and NDE regarding. One side note here is that the City of Henderson has delayed this process by 30 days. Towards the end of July 2025, the SBCSA will submit their district questionnaires to their board, and the SBCSA staff will notify the public and NDE regarding their decisions. Slide 4. I will now discuss each of the charter school applications submitted to the SBCSA, the City of Henderson, and the City of North Las Vegas. The SBCSA submitted 4 applications for review. The application table consists of the school name, grade levels, 6-year enrollment projection, and I'd like to take note that the 6-year enrollment projection is the estimated number of enrolled students at the end of a 6-year period after the school has been approved to be open. Also, we have the affiliation status, and that term states that if a school is affiliated with an EMO, which is a for management organization, or a CMO, a charter management organization, which is a non-for-profit entity that actually holds the charter and runs the school as well. They serve as the board in the educational management service, or it runs directly by a board, as most traditional charter schools do. And now I'll go over the names of the SBCSA schools that applied. The first is Citizens of the World Charter School in Las Vegas. They plan on serving grades K through 8 with a projected 6-year enrollment of 510 students, and they are affiliated with the CMO. The next is Game Changers Sports Academy, which is a 6 through 12 grade level being served, and with an enrollment projected at 560 students. They are non-affiliated. Pathways in Education Las Vegas is a 9 through 12 school with 330 students, and they are affiliated with the CMO. And if they do get approved, it would be the first school that would be approved, in my knowledge, over a decade of doing this, to be on the alternate performance framework. The next is Purpose Leadership Academy, which plans on serving K through 8 with a 6-year projected enrollment of 459 students, and they are also non-affiliated. Now we'll look at each individual application as we go through, and what I'm going to do is we're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to look at the Citizens of the World. As we look at the overall rating, now the way this works, if you get a does not meet in one area, the overall rating of the application is does not meet. In the case of Citizens, the applicant is proposing to serve zip codes where existing schools are not overcrowded and are operating below their enrollment capacities. The application lacks demonstrated history of providing an educational model with a proven capacity, credible planning, and through research and analysis aimed to increasing access to students to 3, 4, and 5-star schools that are now not being served. Game Changers. Game Changers School also did not meet the standards, and you're going to find that a lot of these are for the similar reasons. They're proposing zip codes where they would like to locate and serve students which are not overcrowded and are operating below their capacity. Their application lacks a demonstrated history of providing access to 3, 4, and 5-star schools, and the applicant is proposing zip codes that are not aligned with the SBCSA's identified geographical needs. Next is Pathways in Education. Pathways in Education also did not meet the standard. Again, as I stated earlier, you'll see a lot of the same reasoning, and that's because they're wanting to serve zip codes where we do not have overcrowding in the district. They are operating below their enrollment capacity. The application lacks a demonstrated history of providing an educational model with a capacity to provide 3, 4, and 5-star schools. And that's basically saying that, have they done this work somewhere else and in the similar type of communities, and in those communities were they able to provide 3, 4, or 5-star schools? Next is 2 of the identified service zip codes include areas that already have access to adequately performing 3, 4, and 5-star schools, which are not classified as underperforming. Rounding off the last application is Purpose Leadership Academy. Purpose Leadership Academy also did not meet the standards of the rubric, and the applicant is proposing to serve zip codes that are not overcrowded. They have a lack of demonstrated history providing an educational model, and also the applicants have previously applied to the SBCSA in the last application cycle and were not granted a contract. That concludes the SBCSA applications. Now we're going to move on to the City of Henderson applications. City of Henderson submitted 4 applications, and those schools are Founders Classical Academy. Founders Classical Academy did not meet the standards, and the reason they did not meet the standards is that they're proposing to serve zip codes where schools are not overcrowded. The applicant is proposing zip codes that are not aligned with identified geographical and academic needs. The identified service zip codes include areas that already have access to adequately performing 3, 4, and 5-star schools. And also, they're proposing one zip code, which is the 89015 zip code, where two of the five elementary schools and both middle schools are underperforming. So that would be one that would come closest for them choosing. The next is Kesher Academy, and Kesher Academy also did not meet the standard. The applicant is proposing to serve zip codes where we do not have overcrowding. The applicant is proposing zip codes that are not aligned with the identified geographical or academic needs. The identified service zip codes include areas that are already being currently served by CCSD or other charter schools with 3, 4, or 5-star ratings. And the only zip code that would be relevant for them is 89015. The applicant is proposing locations outside the incorporated city of Henderson, which is contrary to NRS. NRS states that they must be within the incorporated city limits if they're going to put a school sponsored by a municipality. Next is Pioneer Technology Arts Academy of Henderson. Again, they did not meet the standard. They're proposing zip codes which are not overcrowded, except for the zip code, which is 89044, and for some of the schools in zip code 89052, which do have capacities over 100%. The application lacks demonstrated history of providing access to 3, 4, and 5-star schools. The applicant is proposing zip codes that are not aligned with identified geographical needs. In addition, the identified zip codes, including areas that have already performed, schools that are performing at a 3, 4, and 5-star level. And the only school that would be eligible in that case is 89015. Next is Signature Preparatory Academy. Signature Preparatory Academy, the applicant is, again, proposing zip codes that are not in overcrowded areas, except for enrollment capacities in 89052. The applicant lacks a demonstrated history of providing access to 3, 4, and 5-star schools. The applicant is proposing zip codes that are not aligned with identified geographical needs. In addition, let me get back to there. Sorry. It's hard to read and press the thing at the same time. We'll get you there. Signature Preparatory. Also identified service zip codes include areas that already have access to adequate performing 3, 4, and 5-star schools. The City of North Las Vegas is our last round of applications that we will review. The City of North Las Vegas submitted 2 applications for the 2025 charter school application cycle for the district to review. Last week, my office was informed by that both applicants were denied by the City of North Las Vegas. The applicants may appeal the decision within 60 days. Those schools are Nevada Early College and Career Academy, and again, Purpose Leadership. And we'll discuss Purpose Leadership being twice on here in just a second. Nevada Early Learning and College Academy did not meet the standards. Again, they're proposing to put schools that there is not overcrowding. The application lacks a demonstrated history of being able to provide access to 3, 4, and 5-star schools in the areas they plan to serve. The applicant is proposing some zip codes that are not aligned with one of the identified geographical needs. Purpose Leadership is our last school that we will be reviewing. Purpose Leadership is College and Career, Purpose Leadership, thank you. The applicant is proposing to serve zip codes where the existing schools are not overcrowded and are operating below enrollment capacity. The application lacks a demonstrated history of providing an educational model to the service area with 3, 4, and 5-star schools. The applicant has previously applied to the SBCSA and was not granted a contract this past cycle. And this cycle, as I stated earlier, the applicant is also was denied by the City of North Las Vegas, and the applicant is proposing locations outside of the incorporated area of the City of North Las Vegas, which is contrary to NRS. Over a 6-year period, if all proposed charter schools are approved and reach full enrollment, the district's enrollment could be impacted by approximately 6,675 students. This projection emphasizes the need for continuously to update and refine our growth models to accurately forecast student distribution and to guide future planning. The potential enrollment shifts will also inform the examination of additional programs and the strategic placement of magnet schools to ensure the continued offerings are competitive and high-quality options for families. Target marketing support will be essential, particularly for schools in areas where enrollment may be affected, to promote the strong programs currently available across the district and to retain student interest. This concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions that you have, and thank you for allowing me to present this evening.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the trustees? Trustee Biassadi, you're on the, online. Do you have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. I found this process really interesting because I didn't know all this, so thank you. One of the questions, I guess maybe even comments that I had was maybe we should put this on the list for next legislative sessions, BDRs of like splitting, the district as far as having this much intervention with charter schools. Even though the discussion is important, I feel like maybe, there should be some kind of ability for the charter schools to go off on their own. So, and I do appreciate the conversation we're having together with them, but I'm not, I'm just like trying to see where, are we giving them any kind of, since we're part of the process already, are we giving them any kind of like feedback as far as these are the zip codes that are underserved or at overcapacity? These are the locations that would be best suited for this location or this charter?
Trustee Dominguez, for the record, Dan Tafoya. We are establishing collaborative efforts with all of the municipalities. This is the first year that municipalities are getting to do this, so it's very new work to them. They're trying to kind of figure out their way through this, and as they get better at it, they would be able to have more collaborative efforts. But yes, there are underway collaborative efforts to have those discussions. Great question.
Do we give them any feedback, the charters that are applying?
The feedback that they get is from their sponsors. We're one of many people that provide. They can ask different work groups as well for sponsorship, but the sponsors, such as the State Public Charter School Authority, will help them, because if they deny the application, they have to give them a reason why they denied it, and they'll work with them. They have 60 days to come back and remedy that situation if they find that that's apropos at that time.
I see. And when we give our feedback to the city municipality, do we maybe give, I'm trying to look for like not just a no, but maybe them to have a, where could you put this school, or where could you better align so they can get a yes? But, because if we're going to try to work together and make sure our schools aren't at overcapacity, maybe giving a suggestion like this zip code would be a lot better placement for everyone, for the community.
For the record, Dan Tafoya, again, great question. I almost called you Senator Dominguez, so I gave you a raise there. Trustee Dominguez. When we, as part of the package, as part of the package, what we do is we submit the zip codes in where they're proposing, and so we give them feedback on what the capacities are and what the star ratings are, so they're able to work with their sponsors and say, hey, this might be a better place to put it. There's also items in NRS that state that there has to be an academic need. So as you're looking at, are you putting in areas that have a high dropout rate, that have areas that a significant amount of the students attend 1 and 2 star schools? And that was a legislative action that took place around 2016 and has moved forward, and the SBCS has kind of spearheaded that work. So your question is very well taken, and they are working together to address those issues. And as they get better at it, let's hope they do a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Satori.
Thank you. One question, when you're talking about the zip codes, I understand that part, and I was trying to remember, I thought that there was a distance proximity to a district school. Is that the case or not, that they couldn't open within a certain mile radius of a charter school, or is that not the case?
Trustee Satori, Dan Tafoya for the record. I do not believe that to be the case. There hasn't been a statutory requirement that I'm aware of that has a mileage or a distance between those schools. As you know, we do have schools that are closer in proximity to each other, but that is something that I'm sure that may be addressed in the future. It's a great question. Thank you.
Trustee Barron.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam President. I was wondering if we could maybe have the superintendent, if that would be okay. We had Dr. Brad Keating who he's very familiar, of course, with what the process that the state put out. That we are merely we as municipalities and as a school board, as a district, we are just basically we're working to fulfill this process that was put to us by the state. Would that be okay if maybe we had Dr. Keating come forward and explain, how we came up with this process? Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Anytime that Dr. Keating has the opportunity to come to the mic.
And by the way, Mr. Tafoya, it's always a pleasure to see you. I love that tie, and I wish I had as much style as you do. I wish I would have half as much style as you. I get it. I got Mickey Mouse, though.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. Brad Keating for the record. Happy to be here right next to this fine individual, Mr. Tafoya. So if I can go back in time, and Mr. Tafoya spoke about it. So in 2017, the Clark County School District brought a bill draft forward, and it failed during the legislative session. That bill draft was to ensure that there was communication and collaboration between charter schools and school districts when schools were opened. The reason for that in the planning process was there's a site in town here that if you take one plot of land, you cut it in 4 quadrants. There was a K2 and a 3-5 school by CCSD. While the 3-5 school was just about it was a year out from being opened, we found out by a sign that there was a charter school going right next door. We had no idea that that school was going in. It was a big issue. Students were confused. Parents were confused. There were issues with being able to get transportation in and out for our school buses as well as parents. So that was in 2017. That bill failed. And in 2019, we went back to the legislative session. In 2019, there was what was called the Achievement School District. The Achievement School District was able to, in essence, take over failing schools and bring charters in to run our Clark County School District schools. That never occurred because of the process and what was going on at the state. But during that, in 2019, the legislature, Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson, and with the help of this man next to me, who was the man behind the curtain, helping figure out what to do, we were able to abolish the Achievement School District, and during that exact time, we abolished the Achievement School District and we required that that collaboration occur. So anytime a charter school opened, they had to come to the county district in which they were working at, in which they were going to be, and they had to collaborate with us. We had to look at the academic, the social, the emotional the social needs, the academic needs, and the demographics of the school area to determine if that school was suitable. We then had the opportunity, we were still approving charters at the time. So we were able to use that data to then make a decision with you all as a board whether the charters would open or not based on that demographic information. After that, Clark County School Districts decided not to continue in the charter atmosphere of sponsoring them. At that point, the charter, the county and the cities were able to do so through law. And within that law, this piece still stands where they have to go out and get that feedback from the local jurisdiction in which they're working at. So we now, as Mr. Tafoya said, when the city of Henderson or city of North Las Vegas receives a school application, they work with us. We provide that information to the State Public Charter School Authority, who's the authorizer, and they utilize that information on whether to open or not. The biggest piece of all of this is for Brandon McLaughlin and the facilities team, because we have to know what's coming in around us when you all are deciding where to open schools and where to build schools. That collaboration was not occurring. So the biggest reason that we have this, the bill and the collaboration now, is to ensure that we're utilizing our dollars appropriately and building where we need to, and not cannibalizing a market or having too many seats that aren't needed in one area. I hope that helps answer a little bit of that question.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate that, Dr. Keating, because as a new team, it's a learning opportunity, and we want to take advantage of you being here physically, and thank you, welcome home. And number two, we are not in the charter school business of sponsoring charter schools. And so it's going to be a new arena for us as a team. And so thank you for that history lesson. Trustee Barron.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, thank you very much, Mr. Foya. And also, I want to go on record and thank the city of North Las Vegas. They got packed like this thick, and they had only about a month to go through, analyze, ask questions, bring them in for interviews, and then write a report back that, again, was about this thick. I know, I call her our education czar, Ingrid Johnson, was working with our legal team, and I'm probably forgetting someone else, but they worked really diligently, and they probably didn't do anything else other than this for a whole month. So, they worked very tirelessly, and I appreciate their work, and of course, the work of the district in supporting them. Many of these applicants, they're not that far away. And I honestly believe that if they continue to evolve, right, they might actually be on. And again, this is the first time we've ever done this. It's a trial kind of phase there. I think with time, like anything else, right, they could probably grow into a public asset. But I do trust the system, and I really do appreciate the work from the state, working, I think, with the district and with the municipalities in this new system. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Strophagan?
So I just want to say, in the day, we looked at charter schools as competition for public education. But the reality of that now is that we have to be cognizant that not all students' needs can be met in certain spaces. But that's not to say that as a community we own every child. And what I appreciate with our new leadership and with some of the new communication within the municipalities is more of that collaborative spirit as a community. We are here serving public schools and students, and we want people to know that our schools are the best. So I want that on record. Public schools are the best. And so I like the way that the direction, the collaboration is moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Tafoya. I did see you at the City of Henderson yesterday at the community education, having conversation, and I appreciate that new dialogue that's happening. So thank you.
Awesome. Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. I really appreciate that, Dr. Keating. That was something I guess I was missing, is that background history, that knowledge that you have. And I do want to say, I support parentals' rights to choose whatever education they would like for their student. They have, you obviously know your student as a parent. One of the things I was wondering is, are we going to have updates moving forward regarding these proposals or these application cycles?
For the record, Dan Tafoya. Trustee Dominguez, we update the superintendent. I'm sure I'll update the superintendent and provide any information as it evolves.
Okay. Will they will any be coming to the board like quarterly or yearly?
For the record, Dan Tafoya, this occurs on an annual basis right around this time each year. It used to be every 6 months, but they've reduced it because of the amount of paperwork and time that it takes. Yeah. So this typically happens around each time this year. And as our timeline stated earlier, we'll usually find out all the results somewhere towards, I'd say, end of August.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is not an action item, so we're going to go ahead and move on to 4.03. Thank you, Mr. Tafoya. Thank you, Dr. Keating. This is a public hearing on possible approval of a new memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Clark County Association of School Administrators and Professional Technical Employees regarding additional pay for certain nurses and administrators responsible for nursing services. I'm going to ask our legal counsel, Mr. Okazaki, do you have any comments on this one?
Yes, thank you. If I could just review this. John Okazaki, General Counsel, for the record. What's before you today is a proposed agreement between the Clark County School District and the Clark County Association of School Administrators Association for extra pay for 13 employees who primarily provide nursing and related services. Both parties agree that these particular employees are required to go way above and beyond their normal work hours, even overtime hours, to provide services on call, basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are going to be negotiating this as part of the negotiated agreement. CAS has already asked for that. This is not part of the negotiated agreement. This is just a one-time agreement to pay these 13 employees for the work that has been done up to this point. I have been advised that this is late coming, that they have been doing this work for many years, and that is finally going to be addressed in formal negotiations. But before you today is just a one-time agreement, $3,500 per person for these 13 specific individuals.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions by the trustees? Trustee Stevens.
Thank you, John. I am all about bonusing people for great work, especially work like this. I just have a couple questions in the sense if you could just kind of help us understand a little bit about like why these 13, how are they identified? Are there going to be others that are going to say we were left out? Why weren't we chosen? Like, was there a process? Was there anything specifically defined that said these are the ones that are going to be getting these bonuses and this is why, so that it's clear and there's no issues down the road?
I'm going to ask Monica Cortez to provide some information. We did go through that analysis to determine why these individuals and not others should receive this, so she could provide some information.
Go ahead, Dr. Cortez.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, Monica Cortez to the record. The individuals that are in front of you are doing extensive work, and without them putting in this time, we would not be able to move operationally and have students attend or provide the necessary services. So in regards to the individuals, I'll give a couple examples. The health services directors, they are responsible for, often at 4 a.m., shuffling around schedules for all the nurses that are providing special procedures that are separate from school nurses, constantly doing coverage not only amongst their region, but also we have many nurses that attend with students from their residence. So it is a process that is pretty much continuous from 4 a.m. they start calling in all the way to late evening. We also have many field trips that occur in our district, and as we have identified, those are necessary experiences for students. And those individuals also assist with either communicating with the teams that are there or just the processing. We've had just recently a few situations that it's been imperative to have them available. There are always people who I think do above and beyond, but these are essential duties that must occur for our students to continue having the services. In regards to crisis response, as you're well aware, those two individuals are 24/7. We receive calls. Crises happen at any time. And just the availability to have them assist with not only the communication through leadership, but also to constantly provide support to not only our schools, but our students. And I'm trying to think. I think that's it, but if you have specific, I can go into more detail.
Trustee Stevens, yes.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I guess what I'm more specifically, I'm very process type. So I'm just wondering, is there do you have a defined formula that says these qualifiers or what constitutes this bonus for these folks?
Do you want me to? I can tell a little bit of how we did it internally. So it is something that we've been looking at a long time. And again, a lot of people at different times do extensive work. The formula that we looked at is what is more than what is reasonable as an administrator, what is essential to students coming in. And so that's how we determined overall who these administrators would be, because I think I could tell you not only every administrator in the district, but also in our division, because it is unique, there's varied situations. These individuals, if they didn't put in the time, there is no one else that could do the work. So to give an example, you have to be skilled in dealing with crisis response. In the nursing, you have to be trained and knowledgeable in what is available in different strengths. So if those individuals are not there to do this on a consistent basis, we wouldn't be able to provide that service. So that is, in thinking about, I don't want to say it's an official rubric, but our process of going through, that is how we eliminated or provided the recommendation of who we thought would be relevant. When you're talking about other administrators, there are other avenues that we can compensate them for duties that go above their contract, but it is not to the extent that these 13 were brought to you by. The amount, I would have to defer. It was something between our general counsel, Kasapi, and then input from us as well in looking at the time.
Thank you. Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. So I know you'd mentioned these won't be renewed. Is there, showing that, we're going into a next year, how are we going to be able to say, are these staff members not going to do the same work, or was it just an extortionate, a large amount of work this year that we just put on them?
We've agreed that we need to negotiate this. So both parties have agreed that the responsibilities that are being put on these employees and the work that they're doing is above and beyond and needs to be addressed. So that's why we will be negotiating, and in all likelihood, potentially will have provisions in there to address these types of employees. But we did not want to, say this is formal negotiations or a negotiated provision. It's not yet, so we still have to negotiate it.
I see. Are these employees salary employees?
Yes.
Is there do we have in their contract the hours a week? Is it a normal standard 40 hours a week that they've gone over?
No, I think like Dr. Cortez said, it's all administrators work more than 40 hours a week. Based on her formula, it's like a couple of criteria, right? It's essential work that nobody else can do, and it is way above beyond what reasonably most administrators do. That was kind of the form. We didn't do per hour because we're not paying per hour. CASA had asked for more. I think Dr. Cortez was probably okay with it, but the superintendent and I negotiated. We agreed with CASA that $3,500 was a reasonable amount at this point, and so that was agreed upon. It was not hourly.
Thank you.
If we did hourly, it would be way more than $3,500.
I'm sorry, I do have a last question. Where are these funds coming from?
Madam President, Monica Cortez for the record. So it's a couple different various funds. It depends upon where their salary is funded from, but that was also in the equation to ensure that we had enough funding through either our general supply line that was allocated to the budget, or some are also split funded between Medicaid reimbursement.
So this qualified as Medicaid reimbursement?
Okay, Medicaid reimbursement, the purview is that we may use it as we feel is appropriate as long as we're abiding. It's not charges that are charged for Medicaid. We have a division, and I will tell you a bulk of our reimbursement is actually from the work that the Health Services Department is able to provide. So it is a reasonable expense, and that is why part of their salaries is also there.
Thank you, and I apologize for keeping it going, but I still have that just led me to another question, I'm sorry. So with Medicaid and reimbursement, is it just a fund, a pot of money that we have set aside, or I thought it was allocated dollar for dollars?
Madam President, Superintendent Ebert, it is a complex question. If the superintendent approves, I could go into more depth at another time, I would recommend. But we have a very thorough process that is not only followed through Medicaid, but through the state of how those funds are dispersed. There is a process that we do through our division in determining the needs for students and staff to provide the support that we do, that we allocate that budget. It is through a revenue that occurs, the following year, but it is a budget that the district is able to utilize. At this point, we have used it to assist with student services division needs in multiple capacities.
Thank you. And if you could give me a brief kind of percentage point, if half or 50 or 20 maybe, or maybe in a ballpark of how much is covered by Medicaid? Or you're estimating? Projecting, I'll
With all
use.
due respect, I don't have that in front of me. I didn't realize I was going to need to get into the detail, but I can provide it to the superintendent for her information.
Thank you.
We do have the
Thank you.
breakdown.
Trustee Barron. Did you have a question, Trustee
Oh, I'm
Barron?
sorry, I did, I heard, I guess I still have meatloaf running through my head here.
I hear you.
Yes, Dr. Cortez, as always, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to hear from you. You described that these are essential services that the nurses are providing, along with the administrators. Given right now, I guess anything in medical is golden. Does this boost help you to retain and maybe even attract more people who have these this essential knowledge that is really not it's not really replicated by any other district staff? Is that correct?
Madam President and Superintendent Ebert, Trustee Barron, that's absolutely correct. It is part of our retention. It is for a very select individuals, those 13 that provide duties that we just don't have the capacity to do. And what we are asking, I hate to put this on the record, what we are asking them to do is a lot of time that if we don't have our nurses scheduled and we don't have procedures covered, that means students will not be able to come to school. That means we will not be able to provide a safe learning environment for those students that we're required to do.
And I take it, it's actually difficult to find people, go out, fly the position, recruit for this, right, to bring people in. I guess in a way, we're almost like saving a few bucks by throwing a few bucks to keep people. That's a kind of a speculative question there.
Madam President, Trustee Barron, yes, an alternative way to handle this would be to hire more administrators in that field and create, like hospitals do, a shift schedule that will exponentially increase the cost to do that.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
very much, Dr. Cortez.
Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan.
Thank you, Baron, Trustee Baron. It was kind of in the vein that what I was going to say is that I look at equating it to kind of like the facility side of things. Like, we cannot find electricians and HVAC. We are competing with industry. So I think this is a minor, like, stipend because of the demands that they are on call 24/7, and even on vacation, they are answering the phone. They have that obligation. They have that commitment and dedication. So I just want to kind of just say to my colleagues that I would be very comfortable. I mean, I wish we could give them more, but we don't have that at this time. And maybe there's consideration in the future for reclassifying and looking at that salary in the future.
Thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President, and I will reiterate my colleagues' statements here that I think the key statements here, and I think Dr. Cortez did an excellent job of explaining our detailed questions, and that's the phrases of essential services, and the other phrase, without these services, our students would not be able to attend school. So with that, I would like to make a motion to approve 4.03. And I'm not going to read the entire item, but...
And Trustee Cavazos, it's a public hearing, so let me see if we have
that's right.
anybody.
I'm sorry, forgot that.
I didn't see anybody signed up for public comment. Is there anyone here for item 4.03? Oh, and I do have Trustee Biasotti. I didn't know if you had a question.
I did not have a question. I wanted to second the motion.
Okay, hold on for a second. So I see no buddy coming forth, so the public hearing is done. I'll go ahead and entertain Trustee Cavazos' motion to approve item 4.03, and I have a second from Trustee Biassatti. So I will call to cast the vote. I asked a great question. So Vice President Zamora is asking me if we need to take a vote, and I had asked our legal counsel, and he told me yes. So that's, we are proceeding that way. So please cast your votes. Trustee Biassatti?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes 7-0. We're going to go ahead and go to item 4.07. This is a public hearing on possible proposal of a new memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Clark County Association of School Administrators and Professional Technical Employees regarding additional pay for principals responsible for extended school year programs. Mr. Okazaki.
Yes, thank you, John Okazaki, General Counsel for the record. This memorandum of agreement with CASA is a little different than the one we just reviewed. The history of this is in May of 2022, the board approved a memorandum in which it provided additional pay to administrators to run summer programs, specifically extended school year, in addition to their normal duties. So similar to the one we just talked about as far as doing additional duties above and beyond what administrators are required to do. The memorandum was passed for the summer of 22, and I guess based on some ambiguity, the parties continued the practice year after year, 23 and 24. When I came in and it was brought to my attention that we didn't really have a clear memorandum providing for this and that we were operating under the 2022 agreement, I recommended that we clean that up. The superintendent gave me direction to meet with CAS and determine what we're doing. So this memorandum will definitively authorize the payment for this summer because we had been operating under that premise even going into the planning for this summer. But it will be the last summer that we do this unless it is negotiated it is put into the negotiated agreement. So a couple of things here. One, it memorializes the informal understanding of the parties for summer 2025, but also officially puts an end to it until it goes into the negotiated agreement.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions from the trustees? Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. Same questions, like where is this money coming from?
I actually don't know definitively what, Dr. Cortez, you're getting up here, so I have a feeling, but I don't want to say.
You don't have to be formal. Go
Thank you.
directly to the.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, sorry, it's habit. You only have me one more meeting for that. That is, ESY is funded. We are required federally to provide ESY. It is through Fund 250, which is general fund. And so that will also come through there.
Are we setting a precedence by doing this, action?
John Okazaki for the record. As I indicated, we had, the board had formally approved for this pay in 2022, and the parties continued that practice. So it was my understanding that both parties understood it to continue based on that approval. I think this memorandum clears it up for 2025, that absolutely it will be, it's authorized if you approve it. But more importantly, it puts an end to it so that there's no there's no question that unless it's negotiated into the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, that it will not continue.
I guess, could you just maybe give us a little background? That might help. If you could give us a background on why this came about this year versus not 23 or 24?
Mr. Okazaki gave that. Would you like him to repeat it? Or?
Well, I'm just, because he said it was 22 the last time we had done this, and so I'm just wondering why not 24? Why not 23?
If you could restate it for the record, Mr. Okazaki.
I came back to the school district in August of '24, and shortly after that, I found some of these memorandums floating around and practices being done, and I've been trying to advise the superintendent on how to clean some of this up. I understand that the prior memorandum and the understanding of the parties that it was just a continued practice, but I wanted it cleaner. So I said, we need to either continue it with a new memorandum or cancel it or both. And the agreement between the parties was, yes, let's formalize it for this summer. And the understanding is that by the time I caught it, or no, I shouldn't say caught it, by the time I intervened and asked about all this, it was, we had already told these administrators they were already expecting, they had already done all the prep work, and so there was some of a reliance that they were getting paid already. So thankfully, both parties agreed to just formalize it for this year, but this would be the last year.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just ask one last question, have we had a set amount of, like, nobody else can come back and say, oh, I was also part of this, I can have a claim on this?
No, it's everybody's aware of this. We have never had any, it's been going for 3 years. We've never had any dispute. We have also advised all of our administrators that unless it's in the CBA, this will be the last time it happens.
Got it, thank you.
Trustee Biasotti, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'd have a brief question. Can we get numbers again? How many principals are we talking about, and what is the total amount?
John Okazaki for the record. Unfortunately, Trustee Biasotti, I don't have that information. We don't necessarily know how many ESY administrators are going to work the hours and how many schools there are and programs there were going to be. We will eventually have that number. I don't have that number for you tonight.
Thank you. And based on that, I would like to either make a motion to table this or I'll wait until you get to that portion. Thank you.
Okay, I have one more question from Trustee Esparza-Straffigan.
It's not a question. I just want to give a little more context to the history of, because I lived it as a former principal. So prior to this happening, traditionally, just as my personal point of view and experience that I'm sharing from my past, that schools didn't have the funding to compensate administrators. It was an expectation and them a way to gain experience. And typically, assistant principals, or at the time deans and back in the day, would do that work in the summer because it would be a step and a leg up to becoming promoted in the future. When COVID came around and then ESSER funding came into play is when they started to expand it and give that funding, which we've never had before, as a windfall, so that all schools could provide summer school. And so all of our schools at that time during that period were providing summer school, and they were getting paid, administrators were getting paid, I believe, it's almost equivalent to this amount, maybe $8,000 to $9,000 for the summer services. So that was probably when that started. And unfortunately, thank you, Mr. Okazaki, you are definitely cleaning up some of the past practices of culture and expectation. And so I appreciate that there's an understanding that this may be the last time that they get paid for this. But it's unfortunate that we're going to be going into the summer of July, and people have signed up thinking that they're going to get paid to do summer school for our students, and especially our students with disability. I'm very worried that they will not have that coverage or supervision.
Thank you. Since this is a public hearing, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this item? I did not have anybody signed up. Okay, yes, Mr. Okazaki?
I just wanted to add, I've been getting some additional information. I just want to add what I can at this point for clarification. I'm getting information that we have 68 ESY programs. Is that a fair way to say that? Some are these going to be run by 12-month administrators who would be eligible for this. Some would be 11-month administrators who wouldn't, but who would be actually paid their daily rate or something. So Castle wants me to point out that if we're paying 11-month administrators, it's going to be more than what we would be paying $450 a day for 12-month administrators. And that it's limited to 20, as the MOA says, it's limited to 20 days, which it also excludes any days that an ESY administrator is out. So if they're sick or something like that, they're not getting the pay. So to get an idea of how much money that is, it'll be less than 68 schools, and then it'll be maximum 20 days per. So $450 per day.
Thank you. Trustee Biasotti? Did you want to, we're done with questions. Did you want to continue with your motion?
Thank you. No, I wanted to thank our counsel for shedding light on it, and it does give a different perspective on it, especially with the limited number of days. And so I would like to withdraw that motion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Therefore, I will entertain a motion to approve the new memorandum of agreement. Trustee Barron.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Trustee Stevens.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. If you could please cast your vote. Trustee Biasotti.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda is 4.05. I'm going to go ahead for consistency and also on the abundance of caution to make sure it's not a conflict of interest for me. I'm going to turn over 4.05 to our Vice President for the discussion and possible action.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I open item 4.05, is there anyone who did not get a chance to fill out a yellow card? If you need to fill one out, fill it out now. All right. We're closing our public comment section for that. This agenda item, I will pass it over to our board counsel, John Okazaki, to give us a background and overview.
Thank you. John Okazaki, General Counsel for the record. Before you is the service, basically the service agreement by your selected board counsel, the firm of Parker and Associates. I've reviewed this fee agreement. It's standard. Everything in there is standard for an agreement between an attorney and a client. Just a couple of things the board should keep in mind when hiring private counsel. The relationship and contractual relationship between a client and an attorney is somewhat different in that it's completely at will. You can terminate. You are never required to retain any attorney. So at any point, regardless of what's agreed upon, you can just say, I do not want you to be my attorney. You would be responsible for paying for work that has been performed. But again, it's a personal service contract between a professional attorney and a client, and the client can never be forced to accept any attorney. So just understand that what you'd be entering into is an agreement going forward for work that you would pay the fees that is indicated here. He has outlined the way his services will be rendered. And you're agreeing to that. But again, if at any point you say this is just not working, you could literally just terminate it on the spot. But again, having to pay for any work that he has already performed. So I just wanted to let you know that it's a standard agreement. I've reviewed it, and I don't see anything concerning in it. It's just a matter of whether the way it's written and the fees that he will be charging for his services are satisfactory to you.
Thank you for that. Now I'll be opening it up for my colleagues. If you have any questions, we also have on call Mr. Joe to give out any answers you all might have. Questions? Trustee Cavazos?
Hi. Thank you, Madam Vice President. I just wanted to ask, and I just saw, because I was away, just saw the agenda and the contract and everything today, this morning. So I just wanted to ask, if I could, Mr. Okazaki, as far as the way that this is formatted, we had discussed at the previous meeting when we agreed on this, whether, is it clarified anywhere in there? I did a very fast skim, that the mode of payment is going to be hourly, not by retainer.
Yes, and Mr. Parker's here, he can correct me, but my review of this is he's giving hourly wages, so, I mean, hourly rates. So, and he's articulated that he's going to be primary, and he's articulated how he will oversee all work that is done for the board by any of his associates, but it is an hourly rate. And so just so you understand how that works, I assume he does it the way all other attorneys, and when I was in private practice, it may have changed because it's been a long time, but it's every 6 minutes. It's a tenth of an hour is how they charge. So the hourly rate is indicated in the agreement. It is likely that you would be charged in six-minute increments.
Thank you for that clarification. I believe I have one other question here, and this has to do with, and this was a matter of discussion which Mr. Parker did answer our questions at the time. In the contract, though, I need in this agreement, service agreement, need a clarification because there's quite an amount of discussion about attendance at our meetings. And in this service agreement, I noticed that it does state, and I wanted to thank Mr. Parker for specifying, a second person from his firm that would be available. However, I do notice it says bi-monthly meetings, which of course are on the second and fourth Thursday of every month, and then it says in any special meetings. So I wanted to clarify, because we also have a third meeting every month, which is the trustee work session, which our previous two attorneys have always attended because they're all, trustee items. And so I wanted to clarify if that would be included. That's on the first Wednesday of every month, unless the president sees fit to change that for different reasons. Sometimes we've had emergencies where we had to do that, or we've had trainings, out of town. And then the other thing beyond meeting attendance are closed sessions. Like, for instance, we have a closed session just about pretty much every Thursday regular meeting at either 2:30 or 3 o'clock, depending on what we have presented to us by staff. So I would like to get a clarification on whether the work session is also going to be included and the closed sessions, or is that something where maybe we're just are we using the term special meetings to include those, if we could just get a clarification, because our work sessions are called trustee work sessions, and closed sessions, as Mr. Okazaki always explains to us, are closed sessions having to do with 241 and 288 items, NRS 241, 288.
Again, I'll speak for him and ask him to correct me if I'm wrong. Again, the way this is working is you hire his firm, you tell him when you need him, he's there. Either he's there or an associate is there to provide the services that you need whenever you need them. If your concern is it going to be Mr. Parker at the work sessions and the closed, that would be something you would have to ask him. But I can almost guarantee you that every piece of work that you ask, that you need, including attendance at any meeting or gathering, if you want him there, he will be there.
I appreciate that. What I'm asking is, and it's not a concern about that because he's already assured us in the service agreement and also in person during the interview, and I thank him for putting down a specific person. What I'm asking is, in previous board representation, it has been, in other words, the president did not have to ask the attorney to attend every single work session or to attend every single closed session. Is that what we're saying here, is that the president or the vice president would need to ask the attorney for every single work session or closed session?
The president or whoever you determine to be the liaison between the board and Mr. Parker could write at the beginning say, I expect you to be at all of these meetings, and then I assume that will be his directive, and he will honor that. So it
Thank
doesn't
you.
have to be for everyone. It can, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Okazaki.
Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan?
Thank you, Mr. Ogazaki. Doing some math in my head, so if Mr. Parker were hypothetically to call you to maybe collaborate a little bit, because we know that that's going to be reality maybe in the beginning for historical and educational ease language and guidance, if he had a 6-minute phone call with you, then he would charge us for an hour.
No, that is, he charges by 6-minute increments. If he talks to you for 3 minutes, you get charged for 6 minutes. But if he talks to you for 10 minutes, and this is just the way that I understand private practice to work. Mr. Parker, correct me if it's wrong, because I've been out of the private practice for over 25 years. But it's when I say 6-minute increments, 1/10 of an hour, anything under that, you get charged for at least 10%, or, that 6 minutes, but it's in 6-minute increments.
And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Parker, sorry to cut you off, Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan, if you would like to come up and just do any clarification, you're more than welcome to as well.
Thank you.
So back to my question, because I'm asking about you specifically, like if he calls you, he can bill us.
Yes, so again, whatever he deems necessary to provide his services
Correct.
is going to be legal services.
Got it.
The control that the client always has is he will be submitting, I would assume, at least monthly invoices, and he has to delineate every charge. So he will say, telephone call with general counsel to discuss, June 26th board agenda, 2 minutes, or, 12 minutes, and then you'll be charged for 12 minutes. It is incumbent upon the client to review those charges, and if there's ever any concern, express that to him and say, I don't want you to do that anymore, that I'm not paying for that, and so on and so forth.
So I guess my only ask before we entertain, I know there might be further discussion, is will the board have access to seeing those invoices as well?
I mean, that would be an internal process, I would assume so. I would encourage the entire board to have access to that. And just for clarification, the agenda item includes the budget for this. And so in the recommendation that I was part of it's kind of like our purchase award, right? We're not saying you're going to spend this much, but the motion should include a motion to approve up to, or approve this certain amount from which you can draw as you're paying services. And again, if it turns out to be more than you wanted to spend, you can start limiting services, you can terminate, you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
The recommendation that we put forward based on what I told you was kind of average was $200,000 for 6 months.
Madam President, I have no further questions, but when it's time, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Thank you, Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan, and thank you for a new title. Appreciate you. Trustee Barron?
Yeah, I guess I missed the last meeting when we were discussing this. I know we're talking about an hourly rate. Have we really discussed the advantages of having his services, Counselor Parker's services on a monthly retainer? I myself, I look at it like this, if we look at his hourly rate, $350 times probably, right now we're thinking it's only going to be like 8 hours a week. It's probably going to be more than that because they'll probably be talking to our legal. Just as I was listening to Counselor Okazaki and, knowing, just listening to his deep knowledge of what we do here on the school board, he was able to answer questions that, that most other attorneys in town would not be able to answer. And that's because he has spent so much time with the district that, he knows this stuff. Our counselor, our board counsel might be needing to take some research that would only be very understandable for him to get caught up on the way we do things for the district. That would be time that would be billable. And, and again, that would be totally understandable. And I'm thinking he's going to wind up, spending more than 15 hours a week catching up with us. I would strongly suggest that this contract be on the monthly retainer. Yes, I know, I'm not good with math, but I can figure out a calculator, and I know on paper, it sounds like it's pretty expensive at $222,000. I would just point out that if you look on Transparent Nevada and see what staff attorneys earn, once you put in benefits, it's more than $200,000 a year. What I'm getting at is this contract that we're engaging in with Mr. Parker, with Counselor Parker, we're not paying his retirement, we're not paying his medical. He's handling all that on his own, and we're actually getting, how should I say, since we're not paying that, we're not incurring. Hey, we don't have to pay for his PERS, on top of this. I really do think, with all respect to my colleagues, I think it would be much more wise to engage his services on the monthly retainer fee, because I have a feeling that we're going to wind up, going to our board counsel a lot more than we even think, and he's going to be engaging us. If he's spending 20 hours a week, in the long run, it's actually going to cost us more to retain our services. And let me tell you, having a bad attorney winds up costing you a lot more, in the long run than investing in a good attorney in the short run. So I would strongly suggest to this board that we engage Mr. Parker at the monthly retainer fee, and well, I guess that would be my 2 cents on this one. Again, we've had good success with Mr. Okazaki, but it's time to get him back to where he needs to be, working on the district. I'm sure my superintendent, definitely agrees with that. And if there's a motion a little bit later on. By the way, if we agree right now, if there's a motion to agree to take him, are we still in negotiation with his with his compensation, or is that being negotiated right here?
I'm helping with the motion. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Trustee Barone.
Yes, Counselor. Again, if there's a motion right now, are we merely making the motion to retain this board counsel, or are we also motioning for his compensation at this time?
Yes, so what's before you is his service agreement, his proposal, for his terms for providing services to the board. If you accept his terms, he will start immediately, he will be board counsel, and you will begin to have access to his services.
Okay.
It's hourly rate, so he will bill you when, you use his services. And just to go back to clarify a couple of things that you've been mentioning, remember I said that on average, because if you think of the meetings that he has to attend, right? Like today, we started at 2:30. We're going to be here, whatever. So just this day alone, not counting the work session, in fact, we have 3 meetings in 2 weeks here, right? Mm-hmm. He'll be at the board retreat. So when I said that it was an average of 20 hours per week, it could very well be that, right? If you look at the rates that, and they're less rates than a private attorney charges, trust me. But even at those rates, you're looking, the $200,000 that I recommended is for 6 months, not a year. So yeah, and in my experience, and again, I've been out of the game for a while, but retainers, the way retainers work is you pay more because they're no matter what, it's a different arrangement than hourly. So you tend to pay a little bit extra even if you don't use it all when you do a monthly retainer. But again, that's up to the board, and of course you can speak to Mr. Parker if you're interested in trying to negotiate a monthly retainer as opposed to hourly rate.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Actually, Madam Vice President, when it's time, of course, after the public has had its say, if they so choose in this matter, I know I would be ready to make a motion to, of course, to accept his agreement, but on a monthly retainer basis.
Thank you, Trustee Barron. I will go to you when it's time. Trustee Johnson?
Yeah, just a quick opine. I think it's, it's a bit of an unknown, so it's going to be expensive whether we have the retainer or the month or the hourly. And I do think the ramp up is going to be expensive. So in the initial start, it may be expensive. And so I think it's going to be wise for us to do a recalculation, just like an audit of how much we spent over this first 6 months and what we project to spend. So it's a bit, to me, it feels a bit like six in one hand, half a dozen in the other, because we're going to spend a lot of money right up front because we're getting used to the arrangement. But to my question, and I think this has already been answered, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. If a trustee emails or calls or texts Mr. Parker, we'll still be charged for that 6-7 minute that he was required to work. So if I text Mr. Parker, get that 6 minutes of work. If I email him and it takes him 6 minutes of work, we'll be charged for any of those because he is working on behalf. But I want to confirm that that is the case, correct?
Okay, yeah, let me just, again, based on my own experience, the way private attorneys work, although they're allowed to charge you for every minute, every 6 minutes that they provide services, they don't. They don't. They will not do that. But yes, technically speaking, if you send him an email or copy him on an email that he has to review, and it takes 3 minutes to review, you could technically be charged 6 minutes. You call him on the phone, and he's on the phone for 15 minutes, that's 18 minutes. That's 3/10 of an hour.
Okay.
Right? That's how it works. But normally, private attorneys will have that list of charges, and then they start marking things off, and they're not that petty to say every 2 minutes I'm going to charge you.
I'm not going to call him petty, but I do know that man went to school
Well,
for a lot of years, and he wants to be paid for his time.
But
So
he also
I
understands
understood
that, he's providing a service, and he wants that to be satisfied
compensated
with the
for his
service.
services.
Correct.
Understood.
Correct.
Thank you.
Trustee Biassadi, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions. Everything's pretty clear. Thank you.
Trustee Barron, do you have a question or?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for the counselor, if he's okay.
Are you open? Yes.
Yeah, the other counselor. That's when, yeah, no, the counselor that was taking the seat, the dapper counselor there. Not that the other counselor's not dapper. I'm
Trustee
always falling
Barron,
into
I
one
recommend
hole
for
after
you
another.
just to take a pause.
Yeah, I'm going back to my Mickey Mouse. Counselor Parker, thank you very much for coming down. Would you be okay with us to retain you at this monthly rate of 18.5 that you proposed?
Let me first say good afternoon or good evening to everyone. Thanks for having me, I think, the third time. And it's nice to meet you, Trustee Barone. The RFP or RFQ was set up in a certain way where hourly fees were suggested. And so that's how we responded. And my negotiations or discussions with Mr. Okazaki have been based on an hourly rate. Is it on? Okay, I'm not sitting close enough probably. And so unfortunately, it may take some more discussion with me and Mr. Okazaki. I don't know exactly how much help or demands you'll place on my schedule, but I'm here for you. And so he was correct. You don't have to ask me but once if you want me at all meetings or 2/3 of the meetings. I'll be there to also address what Trustee Cavasso said. In terms of doing it on a retainer arrangement, be it monthly, yearly, those are retainers typically are dealt with. Generally, a retainer means that you pay a certain amount of money up front. We bill our time, and we bill against that retainer. If we exhaust that retainer, you have to replenish the retainer. I really don't see how an hourly rate arrangement would negatively affect the board, because we're doing work based upon your request. It's not as if we're creating the bills for you. So I don't know if there's any real savings that you would benefit from in doing it as a retainer. Whatever hours we work or don't work, we'll refund the money at any time. And Mr. Osaki is correct. The ability for client to terminate the relationship or for the lawyer to terminate the relationship is always available to everyone. So you're not stuck with me. Hopefully you won't feel that you are. And I don't have a problem doing that, getting back to your question. I just don't see where the benefit is for you.
Okay.
Hopefully that addresses your concern.
Yes, it does, Counselor. Thank you very much,
Oh,
and
you're
I appreciate your candor in this.
Oh, of course. There's no, listen, if we can't go into an arrangement with some trust on both sides, then we have other things we can do. So hopefully that gives you some comfort.
Thank you very much, and it does. I appreciate you coming down and even expressing interest in serving this board. It really does.
Yeah, and I will say again, Mr. Okazaki is correct. Our rate to non-public agencies is a lot more than the rate I've given this board. And I don't think anyone who does this work day in and day out would say otherwise. This is a way of giving back to me and my firm. We do a lot of public or quasi-public work. In terms of getting up to speed, you won't have to teach us 241 or 288. We do this day in and day out. Perhaps some of the idiosyncrasies that go along with this board may require somewhat of a learning curve, but we hit the ground running. So hopefully that gives you also some comfort that we won't spend a lot of your money getting ready. Okay.
Thank you very
Good
much. I'm satisfied now, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Trustee Barron. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you so much. No other questions?
Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan, do you have a question?
I'm
No?
ready.
Okay, well, if you're trying to make a motion, I got to go back to Trustee Barron. Sorry. Trustee Barron, I think we're ready.
Yeah, no. At this point, I would. I guess I would withdraw my I would withdraw the idea of amending the motion and just make the motion to accept the contract as proposed.
Thank you, Trustee Barron. Trustee Barron, are you willing to amend your motion to include the amount that we would need to transfer to guide our board counsel to be able to make the negotiation, complete the negotiation?
I would like to amend my motion to do what you said.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan?
Would the maker of the motion amend his motion to include the amount of up to $200,000 for services rendered?
Most certainly. How's that? That's the easiest way to do this. Again, amend it as you said.
May I second the motion?
We're good, counsel? Oh, he's excited. All right, I think we're ready for a vote.
It's the most important vote of my life.
Trustee Biasotti?
Aye.
Thank you, and that motion passes 6 to 1 abstention. Thank you, Board Counsel. Please do not leave us just yet. We have a few more items.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move to item 4.06, 2025 legislative session overview. We have Dr. Keating and Mr. Todd Story in the house, and I believe we have Dr. Nate Wah on the phone. My favorite team.
Madam President, Trustees, Superintendent Ebert, thank you for the opportunity to provide this comprehensive summary of the 2025 legislative session. My name is Todd Story. I'm the Chief Communications Officer. And I'm joined by Dr. Brad Keating, Assistant Superintendent of Community Partnerships and Government Relations, and Dr. Nathan Wah, Director of Government Relations, who joins us from the birthplace of our nation in Philadelphia tonight. We're glad that he made it there safely. Tonight, we will walk through the process CCSD undertakes to develop its legislative priorities prior to the legislative session, the actual 120 days of the session, and what happens post-session. The process we undertook as a district to deliver for our students was a team effort that started in early 2024, involving departments, bargaining units, superintendents, the community, and ultimately you, the trustees. With that brief history and overview, Dr. Keating and Dr. Waugh will walk us through the rest of the process.
Thank you, Mr. Story, Madam President, Trustees, Superintendent Ebert, Nathaniel Waugh for the record. CCSD's advocacy this session centered on 4 student-focused priorities that this board approved. As a reminder, these priorities were centering student achievement, equitable access to high-quality educators, meeting students' evolving needs, and modernizing systems for a new generation. These board adopted priorities guided our engagement throughout this session, allowing us to determine which bills to engage on and whether to support. CCSD advanced 2 primary bills based on the BDR themes that the board approved last year. These were AB 47, Assembly Bill 47, which would have directed the Nevada Department of Education to use education stabilization account funds for educator recruitment and development. This bill was heard in Assembly Ways and Means, but did not advance further. Similar language was included in AB 584, and we saw a similar, more narrow concept in the Speaker's AB 398. AB 48, Assembly Bill 48, modernizes our bullying statutes to allow for pre-investigation screening and the reassignment of perpetrators rather than victims. I know this is a bill that had been talked about for a long time with this board, and so we're glad that it was passed and signed into law by Governor Lombardo. Several CCSD supported bills passed this session, some highlights. SB 445 improved CTE and work-based learning reporting. SB 90 allocates funding for teacher supplies. This was a program begun under Superintendent Ebert at the state. SB 400 revises IEP rules for transfer students and updates art and music teacher endorsements. SB 444 requires policies on student use of electronic devices. SB 161 expedites arbitration and clarifies strike definitions. AB 398 funds hard-to-fill positions, and AB 527 permits use of bus stop arm cameras for traffic enforcement. Some notable education proposals that did not pass include AB 24, which was an NDE-sponsored bill around competency-based education. AB 292 would have required all schools to have a space for pre-K classes. AB 316 would have mandated the appointment of student trustees statewide. AB 323 would have placed severe restrictions on when a board of school trustees could opt to close a school. AB 426 would have made some SOT governance reforms. SB 174 would have required for external behavioral service providers to be allowed on campus to provide services separate from district personnel. SB 224 would have allowed for NDE to convert district schools to department-run charter schools with facility use mandates. So with those kind of overviews, I will turn it over to Dr. Keating to go into SB 460.
Thank you, Dr. Waugh, and it is certainly a pleasure to see you all in person as opposed to being virtual in Carson City. Because we've been moving so quickly through the agenda this evening, I figured the best way to walk through Senate Bill 460 was to read word by word the 204-page bill. So if you will give me time now. I will walk through a few slides about Senate Bill 460, but before I do that, I just wanted to point out for you all and any public that might be watching, there isn't a backup material that's been provided. That goes through and breaks Senate Bill 460 up by themes and provides every single section within Senate Bill 460 and the effective date and passage. This is a good tool that the Department of Education put together near the end of session that will help us ensure accountability across the way. But Senate Bill 460 was the most significant education bill this session. It combined Majority Leader Canizaro's bill and Governor Lombardo's education bill together. You'll see on the slides, we've included the earliest implementation dates as we go through them. Additionally, NDE, as I mentioned, created that document that provides additional reference material spelling out in detail the relevant sections. So key provisions include state intervention authority for persistently underperformed schools in July 2026. Early literacy mandates, which includes 4 days of professional development for K-3 staff, school-level reading plans, and the opportunity to provide flexible assessments through the state. That becomes effective July 2026. And also the establishment of reading proficiency targets and expanded early grade interventions. Moving forward in 460, the bill also expands accountability and leadership structures. So it creates a new accountability system for school districts and charter sponsors. It authorizes the state superintendent to designate focus and priority districts. It modifies provisions related to charter school expansion by municipalities, placing statutory limits on the enrollment growth during a state intervention. These changes won't take effect until 2029 at the earliest, based on the state guidance. It also establishes a public education oversight board to take over persistently underperforming districts. This board, the Public Education Oversight Board, will consist of 5 members. The governor would serve as the chair of the board, a member appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly, a member by the Majority Leader of the Senate, the Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of Nevada, and 1 individual who holds a license to teach at the school district that is being reviewed. So in this Public Education Oversight Board, which planning begins July 2026, at the earliest, nothing could happen until 2029, where this board would take action based on calling out a school district as being low performing. But this board, through the legislation, allows the Public Education Oversight Board to assume all powers of the Board of School Trustees and take action on those schools or districts at that point in time, if the state decides to flip the switch on for the Public Education Oversight Board. Additional governance and operational changes. It converts appointed trustees in the Clark County School Districts into full voting members as of July 1, 2027. Superintendent hiring in large districts, Washoe and Clark County, will now be subject to state statutory requirements, such as holding a graduate degree or having so many years of teaching and supervisory experience. That takes effect July 2026. In essence, the interim state superintendent on the record said that this is not meant in any way to interfere with the board's decision on who to hire as a superintendent of the district. There are just minimum requirements. So as you choose a superintendent one day after July 2026, a document has to be submitted to the state showing that that individual meets certain minimum requirements, and then the state will approve it, and that will be the end of that. Repeals, let me go back, sorry, I think I jumped ahead. Yep. It repeals key provisions of the local school precinct model outlined in NRS 388G while preserving the advisory and support role of the school organizational teams at their schools. And then an education service center will be created to support struggling schools if and when the state takes over a school to be able to serve as its LEA. And that planning begins July 2026. Senate Bill 460 also carries some significant fiscal and HR impacts, requires the negotiation for differential pay for teachers at Title I schools, which has a vacancy rate of at least 7% for at least 2 consecutive years. It revises pieces of the teacher and administrator evaluation framework, as well as dismissal policies. It mandates professional development in the science of reading for all K-3 educators to begin July 2026. So all of our K-3 educators currently, after July 2026, will have to take a course in the science of reading. Effective July 1, 2028, the Department of Education cannot issue a license to an individual who does not have that coursework as part of their course for licensure. So that's effective July 1, 2028. But 2026, we will start having our individuals go through science of reading. Provide some administrative relief through waiver options for duplicative reports. We all see a number of reports that look the same all of the time. Hopefully, we can reduce that reporting to save time and burden on staff. And then it expands early learning grants and eligibility, providing preference for those students who might have IEPs, documented needs for behavioral, social, emotional supports, members of vulnerable populations, families whose household income is less than 250% of the poverty line, and those who speak a language in the home other than English. So as grants come in to create additional opportunities for early learning, or for pre-K opportunities with nonprofit organizations, for instance, these are the priority areas for the students who would be admitted to the schools first. That's the gist of 204 pages of Senate Bill 460, and I'm sure you will have many questions, and we will go through that. As we go through, I want to mention open enrollment because it ties back, but we've had a number of discussions over the last 120 days about open enrollment. I certainly want to begin by commending Gia Moore and her team on the amazing job they do every single day and what they've been able to do with the change of school assignment. As it was the model that was used for this legislation we're talking about today. Assembly Bill 533, the district had to go up in opposition of at the beginning of session through a number of conversations with stakeholders as they learned about the amazing work being done through our COSA process. The legislation in AB 533 largely became what we currently do in Las Vegas or in Clark County already. So AB 533 formalizes open enrollment statewide. As I mentioned, it mirrors what we're doing in most cases. So things like all non-magnet, non-career technical academies, non-dual enrollment schools must accept out-of-zone students if space is available. So there are some exemptions for some of our choice schools. CCSD must provide multilingual application materials in the top 5 languages spoken in the district. We have to produce quarterly vacancy reports and uniform transfer policies. And then NDE is responsible for establishing a grant program to help parents with transportation. So that was mentioned in Assembly Bill 533, and it was funded in Senate Bill 460, which we just spoke about. So through Senate Bill 460, the governor appropriated $7 million to the Department of Education for the 26-27 school year only to support transportation of students attending schools outside of their zoned area. So beginning in the second year of this biennium, parents will be able to apply to the State Department of Education for funding to help cover transportation. The reason that was put in there is to serve somewhat of a pilot program to see what type of barriers transportation has from students being able to use the open enrollment process. So we will watch that in the 26-27 school year, but that will certainly be a heavy lift on the state to have to provide those dollars to each family. I wanted to mention Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association because on the number of years I've been at the legislature, I've never said NIAA more than I have this session. It was one of the hottest topics at the legislature. 2 athletics-related bills we just wanted to bring your attention to. Assembly Bill 184, it bans athletic recruitment. So if a coach or anybody's found to have violated or tried to recruit a student, they immediately are kicked out of suspended from that current season they're in and the following season. So it's a heavy ban on them. It improves some of the transfer student eligibility. It requires NIAA to align their regulations with law. It also allows for a one-time transfer of students. So that's something that NIAA has worked on, and they've got policy already, I believe, on it. But this bill allows for that one-time transfer for students to be able to move. And then Senate Bill 305. So this was a bill that was vetoed, but it would have required lacrosse as a sanctioned sport and created legislative oversight. A very hotly debated bill up at the legislature. So despite the veto, NIAA has committed publicly through a press release that they will sanction lacrosse by 26-27 school year. So I just wanted to put that on there for you all to know that there will be a lift on the school districts across the state in order to sanction lacrosse by the second year of this biennium. Of the 86 bills, there were 86 bills vetoed by the governor. He broke his last record and has the most vetoes in history here. Some notable education-related bills we wanted to mention. AB 155, it would have expanded collective bargaining topics on us, which would have had a fiscal impact. Senate Bill 205, it seems every session there's this opt-in, opt-out conversation at the legislature. They moved forward this year with an opt-out provision that was vetoed by the governor. Immigration enforcement limits on our staff on campuses, AB 217, that was vetoed. And then AB 416 and 445, we've had conversations with you all over the last few months. Those are two bills, one by Brittany Miller, one by Danielle Monroe Moreno, library-related civil and criminal liability statutes. So those were both vetoed as well. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Waugh to explain some of the statewide budget information and close us out.
Thank you, Dr. Keating. Nathaniel Waugh for the record. So I'll just give this caveat as we talk about the education budget. We're just giving the overview of what was passed and kind of the high in the sky kind of impacts. Obviously, as the conversation goes on with the superintendent and the CFO, the actual implementation of this budget will be something that this board addresses then. So just looking at 30,000 foot view, this session really came up at a time of a little economic uncertainty that the governor and the legislature had to attempt to address. The People Center funding plan faced a $162.9 million shortfall, approximately. That was partly made up with a $115.7 million transfer from the Education Stabilization Account to kind of blunt that impact. This is also partly why AB 47 didn't advance further, because there were a lot of legislation to tap into education stabilization this session. So this resulted in a net $47.2 million reduction in state K through 12 revenue, and the base. However, there were slight increases. The base per pupil increases were $2 per student for FY26 and $70 per student in FY27. So most districts, including CCSD, saw funding declines. CCSD's projected reduction is $38 million, largely due to projected decline in enrollment of approximately 7,600 students. Fiscal year 26 and 27 base per pupil amounts will be $9,501 and $9,572 respectively. And for context, as you can see, we included a chart so you see what the FY25 numbers were for comparison. And we saw obviously weighted and auxiliary funding decrease slightly as well. So what happens next? So looking ahead, the Government Relations Department will collaborate with CCSD departments to implement newly enacted legislation. We will actively participate in the development of the regulatory framework that will shape implementation for key provisions that were passed. Beginning in 2026, the joint interim committees will convene, and we will engage in those hearings to inform interim reports and BDR recommendations for the 2027 legislative session. And throughout the interim, we will continue cultivating strong relationships with federal, state, and local elected officials, sharing CCSD's story and keeping the education policy going. And we will certainly, invite participation from trustees in that work as well at that time. So thank you for the opportunity to share this update. I do want to give, on behalf of myself and Dr. Keating and Mr. Story, a huge thanks to all CCSD staff who supported this work, the last-minute emails, the phone calls, the texts, sometimes panicked, sometimes not, for us to be able to adequately represent CCSD in Carson City. And so with that, we welcome your questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any questions from the trustees? Trustee Cavazos.
No questions. I think they did a more than comprehensive job for us this session, and I want to thank the entire government affairs team for your work, and especially for your communication with the trustees and the updates. It was extremely helpful in keeping us informed. And yes, there was some panic at numerous times, but you really helped alleviate that. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan.
No, I would just like to echo the same sentiment. It's just a very stressful, it's a stressful experience. But I appreciate the staff because of the ability for you to have and navigate it all, and all the nuances is really powerful. I guess my two asks are this. One, not now, but as a follow-up. Fiscally, things that are going to impact us. Like, for example, I'm looking at slide 9, the professional development and science of reading. What is that fiscal impact going to be from us and the expectation? Because that's money right there for us to train our individuals, and this is an unfunded mandate like many are. So I'd like to see fiscal note-wise, like what of the things that were passed would impact us so that we can just be informed about that and have oversight. Then I guess the only other thing, because I'm new to this process, I felt like for those of us that were here with having conversations and input about the BDR, I would like us to start that conversation a lot sooner, please. We have thoughts already and ideas that we'd love to start talking about now before next session goes into cycle.
Thank you for that. Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan, yes, I agree 100% of starting sooner is actually something that we talked about in our biweeklies, and trainings for the trustees too of how it all works, because that is something that I noticed with some of my fellow trustees that just were also learning as we were on this plane that's on fire, to be honest, right? But I do appreciate the team. You all did fantastic. Honestly, being in the building, the vibe was completely different. Like, we are moving in a really, really good direction. And I know our superintendent started a little bit late towards the session, but I can't wait to see where we go, especially with the implementation phase and the interim committees, and how just we continue to grow and rebuild these relationships with our legislators, because there's a lot of work to do. But thank you all, because I know, Brad, seeing you, I tell you, I felt like you were a jock in high school, just saying hello to everyone. Like, the energy is really different, and I can't emphasize that enough to the public. Like, we are really moving in a whole different direction. I do have two questions. So there is AB 217, which is about law enforcement in the schools. I just want to, I guess, give kudos to the team, because that was kind of very much following of what we already have in place here at CCSD, right? So we were kind of leading the charge in that, and we were the sample, because it was kind of what policies can be in place for school districts across Nevada to protect our students. The other question, I guess it's the real question, AB 420. I know it is a bill. I didn't see it on your presentation. I believe that it is about reporting back about use of force. I'm not sure if that applies to Clark. Is it one of those Clark and Washoe things? Is that statewide? What is that going to look like for us?
Thank you, A, for the kind words, B, for calling me a jock in high school. The AB 420 is a use of force reporting bill by Assembly Member Cecilia Gonzalez. So that bill was signed. What that bill requires is what Metro and some of the other agencies do, and our police department supported it, was at the end of every school year, we then have to post our use of force reporting data on our website publicly for people to see, broken out by demographics, a number of different pieces. So at the end of every single school year, we will then be required to post that data so people can see what the issues were and what types of use of force were needed.
Would that be something that can also be presented to the Board of Trustees? Yes? Yes. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Trustee Dominguez.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Brad Keating, and Dr. Keating for being our jock out there in Carson City. Hoping you could elaborate. You had mentioned, man, I forgot what slide that was. For the SOTs, was this? Oh, I'm sorry. Same train of thought. You mentioned that it was. You said something about if it was related to if the district had assumed control. Was there any other changes to the SOT besides obviously if the district remained in our control?
Yes, Brad Keating for the record. So as it relates to the SOTs specifically, they will still advise the principal at the school level. They will still work with them. They will provide their recommendations. So there's no changes to that. As it relates to the public oversight board that could be created, at that point, if our school district was considered low performing and the oversight board decided to take us over in some capacity, then they would have the authority of the exact same authority that you would have. So they wouldn't be able to change laws or change the way the SOT process is outlined in law. They would only have the same authority as you all do every single day.
Perfect. Thank you.
Trustee Barron?
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Keating, Dr. Wah, I said that I would do it for the record. I think I underestimated your abilities. I said that, and I will admit it here in public. You guys did a fantastic job. And of course, I will also say, Dr. Nate, if you're listening, again, congratulations on your PhD during the session. That's quite the accomplishment. I do have one quick question here, and it just I was a little bit unclear regarding the policies for student possession of electronic devices at school. Does that mean the district will be now mandated to come up with more restrictions? What does it actually mean?
Thanks for the question, Brad Keating for the record. So that simply means that the Board of School Trustees has to create a policy around electronic devices in schools and how they will be stored. So we have that guidance. We've put that out to schools. We've put that out to parents. There are other districts that have not done that yet. This was a requirement for every school district in the state to do that. As research shows, it's better to have the students focused on the teacher as opposed to their cell phone.
So we're already like ahead of the we're ahead of the wave anyhow. Then, right?
Brad Keating for the record, yes. We're ahead of the game.
I'm sorry. I thought I was going to have another chance at payback here, but maybe not. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Stevens?
Hi, Brad. So you mentioned just a second ago that there's an opportunity now for this oversight, this education committee, whatever, that they have a lot more power once they deem a school or a district as low performing. In the bill, do they give the qualifiers for what they deem low performing?
Brad Keating for the record. There are mentions within the bill of what low performing means, not specifically defined. The Department of Education now has to take action over the next 2 years to make those decisions, to codify those decisions, and then provide them. We'll have an opportunity through regulatory process to provide feedback to the State Board of Education on where we think it should be. So there's a bunch of work to be done. I will say this is before a school district can ever be deemed low performing and action can be taken on our school district or any district in the state, we will be back at the legislature in 2027. So I assume that there will be changes prior to anything being enacted. And as we go through this regulatory process, we will be able to make changes at the legislative session.
Thank you. Trustee Biassadi, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to share, first of all, how pleased I am with the outcome of the 83rd legislative session. Our governor really demonstrated strong leadership by listening to the concerns of parents and really stood for the rule of law. So I'm also grateful for for the legislative updates that have come out of this session. So thank you for being here today and for addressing all our, at times, tedious questions. That said, I do have one last question. What is the most impactful change we can expect to see in our schools as a result of the rollbacks on SLT operations?
Can you repeat it one more time, Trustee Biasotti? I couldn't hear it.
Yes, I wanted to know as the last question, what is the most impactful change we can expect to see in our schools as a result of the rollbacks on SLT operations?
So the SOT part, Dr. Keating.
Brad Keating for the record. Thank you for the question, and certainly thank you for the kind words, Trustee. I think it was mentioned during the hearings of Senate Bill 460 that NRS 388G did not work the way that it was intended to when it was created and codified into law. I think with the changes, the one change that I think is incredibly important and the legislature believed was important was as we hold our superintendent accountable for a number of student achievement decisions moving forward and making sure that we're moving the needle, it provides the superintendent with the full authority to make a decision on a principal hire. So the SOT still will have the opportunity to provide nominations to the superintendent on who she would select, who they would like to see selected. But if we are holding the school accountable for moving the needle and we are holding the principal accountable for moving the needle on student achievement, the superintendent and the academic team should have the ability to put the person in place that needs to be put there to move the needle. So that is one change of the SOT that I think is incredibly important, as they will advise us in what they believe is the best decision, but the district will have the ultimate say by looking at all of the data, the human resources information. They'll have a complete picture to make the decision to ensure student achievement's the focus at all times.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that thorough explanation. And I have no more questions for now until the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And gentlemen, like I said, I ditto the compliments that were given, especially from outside of our arena. Those that you worked with all made phone calls on behalf of this team for you to compliment the work. So outstanding. And so we do not this is not an action item, and so it's not required. But I do want to close. I know that it is Mr. Story's last board meeting with us. He is going to take on a new chapter in his journey. Just want to express our gratitude on behalf of the team of your investment that you've made over the years, especially with leading the campaigns. We are CCSD and also Everyday Matters. So just thank you, Mr. Story, for your contributions. Let's give him a round of applause. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to 501, public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. I have one person that signed up, Ms. Green. Yes, please come forward. Oh, and we have someone. Ms. Green, and then we have Tanya Atterbury. If you, there's two mics, so you could come to the second one, Ms. Atterbury. And Ms. Green, if you can please proceed.
Okay, I was here last board meeting. I'm Lynn Green for Green Valley Bands. They hired a new band director. However, they went from someone with 20 years of experience, 12 years at the school, to a person who has 1 year of teaching experience, has not even had any jazz experience, and can never replace all the programs that our children were looking forward to. We want our band director back. She could teach the new band teacher how to run a band program. He does not know what a drill chip is, which is what you use in marching band. He does not know about marching band. And he has been told by our principal that there will be no travel when Ms. Freilich had planned many trips and had the money for it so the children did not have to pay for it. In addition to that, our principal, it needs to be investigated. The whole school needs to be audited because Ms. Freilich filed a hostile work environment claim on May 11th. May 21st, her band line, her percussion line was taken away from her. And on May 26th, after graduation, when she performed the music, she was the last day that the teachers were allowed to be on school grounds. She was told she's being transferred to in-house suspension to supervise that. She's got a disability where perfumes and stuff, it doesn't do her well. She's got an actual disability with that. And in that sense, while they were doing the construction, they tore all the soundproofing off the rooms, and so there was a mess, and the principal has said there's no plan to replace those. They missed a lockdown because they could not hear anything because the sound panels were gone, and she got wrote up for that. And it wasn't something, she has asked for that stuff to be replaced. She needs to have the band room, it needs to be fixed regardless of who comes or goes. But Mr. Roberts needs to be investigated and looked at because he's done major retaliatory actions as well as included children in these actions and other teachers. In my 58 years of life, I've always said, not everybody is lying. I'm going to tell you, everybody in this school is lying about her. And that's all but it's retaliatory. And we're missing out on so much.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Ms. Atterbury, and then after her, Ms. Maria.
My name is Tanya Atterbury, for the record. I am a CCSD high school counselor. This is my 28th year. I will be probably retiring after next school year. Just an FYI, Nevada Learning Academy also has an academic center, but we're never mentioned when it comes to presentations and things. Our staff is pretty small, and we have a really large ratio of students in our academic center, so it would be nice if we were included in the presentations and with the data that goes along with it. I also want to tell you that as our school, we do support the behavior schools because we take all their kids for ESY summer school and summer school. We have over 500 kids in ESY summer school, so I just want us to be acknowledged as well. On another note, I have come before you already to talk about Regulation 6150. So I can stand here and explicitly describe how my stepfather had me sit on his hand with no underwear on. I can explicitly describe to you how my virginity was taken at the age of 8. Or I can write these explicit sexual experiences in a book. Then it can be found on the shelves of our public school libraries. I could not, because I do not see the value or the educational value of these books being on the shelves. I know that they're promoted as healthy and therapeutic and necessary for the benefit of diversity, but librarians and teachers and counselors are not qualified mental health professionals. But we are deciding through the lens of adults that a young mind needs to read through the sexual experiences of rape, incest, abuse, experimentation, and how-to books to promote a sense of healing and understanding of oneself. These books are never looked at as how negatively they could trigger a young mind. I know for me as an adult that they do trigger me. We must look at the other side of the coin and consider that these sexually explicit books must be harmful to the mental health of our students. CCSD has no data to prove sexually explicit books improve the lives of our students on an academic environment. I just don't understand why we would allow groups like librarians who are actually holding you all accountable and saying that the superintendent is not doing their job and holding the principals accountable and that they have the power over all of you to decide what is in or inside the libraries. So I just want this broken system to be fixed. I want an open source county library system so everybody can stop fighting, the infighting can stop, the accusations can stop, all the different things that are happening as we are trying to figure out who is right and who is wrong and what is good and what is right. Open it up, let the people see what is on those shelves. You can see what's on the shelves, everybody can see, then we can all have that discussion on who is right, who's wrong, and what is indifferent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Maria? And then our last person would be Ms. Trussell.
Hello again, everyone. I too was here with Ms. Green at the last board meeting. I am here to call your attention to the administrative problem at Green Valley as well. I would have brought these issues up with our SOT, but they do not announce their public meetings, and they do not hold them with any sort of regularity. Why is that, by the way? Is the board aware of this? And if so, are you guys doing anything to remedy that? What we have going on seems to be a principal and administration that does not support its teachers. We have an administrator who seems to have a personal problem with the teacher, and now the students must suffer the consequences. We have a principal that is not required to answer to anyone regarding a decision to demote a teacher that is excelling at their job. We have a principal that is retaliating against that teacher. For example, Ms. Freilich has been trying to get the 2 band trailers rewrapped because they are chipping and peeling. After getting appraisals and fundraising the money, it was settled that Finley Auto Company was willing to give the best price. Ms. Freilich was then pressured by multiple admin to decline their offer and to give the job to someone that they knew personally, but who is not a CCSD approved vendor. This was in December. This person then proceeded to take 1 trailer, not do the work, and refuse to return the trailer. Ms. Freilich communicated with Principal Roberts trying to get his assistance in retrieving the CCSD property, but to no avail. It wasn't until March, when the parents became involved, that anything happened. Why was it that nothing happened until the parents went over Roberts' head and brought the issue to his superiors? Why did he feel it was perfectly acceptable to do nothing until his hand was forced? Another example of his egregious behavior, Green Valley is currently undergoing a refresh, and in March, as part of this effort, all of the soundboards in the band room were taken down. Unfortunately, they were also thrown away. These soundboards cost around $42,000 and are pivotal in balancing the sound space and allowing the musicians to hear themselves and each other more clearly. In our cement buildings, these soundboards compensate for the problematic acoustics. When Ms. Freilich brought this issue up to Roberts, he told her he knew they had been thrown away. There was no plan to replace them, but to get a quote, which she promptly did. She then heard nothing back. How is this principal looking out for the best interests of the students when he knowingly allowed necessary and expensive equipment to be thrown away? The lack of these soundboards means that the sound space is so chaotic that the students didn't hear a lockdown drill. Our students are literally being endangered by this, and the only thing that the admin did was to write her up for not hearing the drill. There's still zero plan to replace those soundboards. The impression this gives parents is that Roberts has zero care or consideration for the safety of the band students, and as a band parent, I find this very disturbing. I'm here today asking you to please do your due diligence and find out what's going on with the admin at Green Valley. Help keep our students safe and successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Trussell, please proceed.
I'm here before you again to discuss the incredibly troubling situation at Green Valley High. At your last meeting, our band family came before you to plead for your help in saving one of the best band teachers CCSD was lucky enough to have. While you opted not to intercede in that moment, I remain hopeful that you will rise to your duties and help us now. Our band family had assumed that because we'd had to repeatedly engage Principal Roberts' superiors over the last year and a half that the board had some sort of understanding of the situation. We were wrong. This was punctuated when one of our band parents received an email reply from Trustee Esparza, I always screw up your last name, so sorry, in which you stated that it was your understanding that Roberts had been communicating with the community. That is not happening. For example, on May 11th, my student informed me that Roberts had canceled the percussion program. I immediately began calling and emailing. On June 2nd, I received a reply from Roberts stating, per your request, doctor, he was reaching out. Why did it take a parent going to his superior for him to respond? By the way, he answered none of my questions in his response. You stated, Dr. Tchaikovsky, that your priority remains to provide a high-quality educational experience for every learner. How was that priority carried out by allowing a principal to remove a teacher with an outstanding record and replacing her with a teacher who's never led a band this size, never taken a band to a competition. And based on his resume, I doubt he has the ability to continue the band at its current level of achievement, much less be able to continue the jazz and other ensembles which have been a core of the award-winning band program under Ms. Freilich's leadership for 12 years. The decision to remove Ms. Freilich is simply baffling. But what is more baffling and frightening is this board is sitting quietly while there is blatant administrative retaliation happening in one of our schools. Our band family, both parents and students, could give you a timeline from the last year and a half full of examples of how Robert's seemingly personal problem with one of his teachers has got absolutely out of control. But let's just look at the last month. After the debacle with our trailer, which has not been resolved, in early May, Ms. Freilich filed a hostile work environment complaint. A week later, Roberts canceled her entire percussion program, giving no cause. A week and a half after that, he reassigned her to in-school detention. I understand there was an issue of students claiming inappropriate behavior, but there's also video evidence proving that the students were lying, so this should be a non-issue. Bearing that in mind, does this not seem retaliatory to you? Because I don't know how else to construe the chain of events, and that's just from 1 month. I'm asking the board to please listen to the community, do your due diligence, and investigate this incredibly troubling situation.
Thank you, Ms. Trussell. That actually concludes our public comment. Our next item is 6.01, upcoming meetings of the Board of Trustees. The next one will be Tuesday, July 1st, 2025 at 8 a.m. It will be at the Southwest Career and Technical Academy. We are now moving to item number 7. I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Trustee Dominguez.
Madam President, I'd like to move to motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Straffigan.
I will second the motion.
I have a first and a second. Will you please cast your votes? Trustee Biasotti?
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0, and the time is, I don't know, 8:37. Thank you. Have a good evening.